Chapter 251, You're not qualified to fight me. Great Chief Evander gripped the armchair in an attempt to prevent himself from killing the boy then and there. As the great chief of the northern tribes, he had to be the example for every warrior to follow. However, even he was finding it hard to keep his rage from rising to the surface. The boy's mouth was simply too obnoxious that he wanted to rip it apart so badly. Even so, he endured. There was a right time for everything, and now was not the right time. Is this the attitude of a knight commander? Great Chief Evander asked. I expected more from an official of the Hellan Kingdom. William snorted before he gave his reply. My attitude depends on who I am talking to. If I'm talking to dogs, there's no need to be polite. Why do I have to act respectful to mongrels who only know how to hide in these mountains? Even a grandma from my hometown has more balls than all of you combined. Another round of roars reverberated across the third peak of the chivalry as several of the warriors weren't able to stop themselves from jumping inside the arena. They would rather die than be insulted by the hateful half-elf who was stepping on their pride and dignity. Damn this boy. His mouth is too evil. Brothers, let me kill that bastard. No, let me kill him. Even if I die, I will bring him to the afterlife with me. Seeing that everything was going south, Great Chief Evander was forced to stand and pacify his people. Stop. Don't listen to him. He's just provoking all of you. Evander shouted. Did you not see what happened earlier? Do you want to die as well? The warriors stopped after hearing their great chief's words, but soon, William's mocking laughter irritated their ears once again. Would you rather die as warriors? Or die as dogs? William sneered. Just take a good look at your great chief. He is just standing there while I call all of you cowards, dogs, and **ies. Do you know why he's not reprimanding me? I'll tell you why. It's because it's the truth. William raised his chin arrogantly. What mighty warriors! Such audacity? If you really are as mighty as you say you are, then why are you hiding here in the mountains like little rats? If you are as mighty as you say you are, then why don't you challenge the Hellan Kingdom to war in a fair battle? William spat on the ground before sneering at Great Chief Evander. Brave warriors who only dare to fight when it was 3 against 1? Just like now, I stand here alone, and yet all of you want to fight me at the same time, and you still have to ask why I call all of you **ies. The devilish half-elf pointed at Connell with a mocking expression. Look at your leader. He is desperately hiding his second son under his skirt. Second warrior? More like second **y. William laughed one more time, and his irritating laughter made all the warriors who heard it gnash their teeth in rage. After laughing, William raised his chin in an arrogant manner in order to continue his taunting. Why don't we ask your god whether he thinks of you as warriors or not? William then pointed his finger at the first peak of divinity that could be seen in the distance. Explore new ovals on nflby.com. The warriors glanced at the direction of the first peak and waited. They wanted their god to smite this irritating boy and turn him into an ice sculpture. That way they could place him as a permanent landmark in the third peak where everyone could spit on his face anytime. William wasn't aware of what the warriors were thinking as he shouted with all of his might. Sovereign that rules over the Kirintur Mountains. If everything that I have said is false, then punish me here and now. The warriors of the Kirintur Mountains are not warriors but cowards. Mere dogs who are now wagging their tails at their new masters, which are the 2 dynasties of the southern continent. Tell me, am I wrong or not? Everyone held their breaths as they waited for the response of the demigod that ruled over the entirety of the northern region. There was no bolt of lightning, no peal of thunder, and not even a sound that came from the first peak of divinity. The deafening silence made the warriors' blood turn cold, for they felt that their sovereign's silence was its silent acknowledgement of William's claims. William, who was the source of the commotion, had an arrogant look on his face, but deep inside he was feeling anxious. He didn't know what kind of being the demigod was, or its stance towards the war that the northern tribes were planning to wage. Actually, William wanted to know if the sovereign of the Kirintur Mountains was also in cahoots with the 2 dynasties. This was more scary than having an army invade the Hellan Kingdom, because fighting against a demigod was no laughing matter. The silence continued. William could have sworn that mere seconds had passed, but for him, it felt like hours. When 5 minutes passed and still no answer came from the first peak, the warriors of the tribe looked at their great chieftain anxiously. Great Chief Evander felt cold. Not because of the warriors' stares, but the silence of their sovereign. Its silence was more deafening than the war cries of all the warriors combined, and it chilled his very soul. See, William said softly. Even your god agrees with me. You are not warriors. All of you are just cowards who only know how to fight when it is advantageous to you. William was about to say more when a shout reverberated in the air. Shut up! Shut your mouth! Connell's bloodshot eyes stared at William as he rose from his seat. You want to steal my bride? Fine, let's fight. If you win you can have the princess, if I win you will take your words back. William chuckled. However, this chuckle seemed more deafening than his laughter earlier. He no longer needed to fight Connell because he had already achieved his goal. Now that the tribe thought that their god agreed with William's claims, their will to fight had also disappeared. Connell also knew that, if this continued, his family would no longer remain as the ruling family of the northern tribe. The reason Evander was called the Great Chief was because all the tribes acknowledged him. If this acknowledgement disappeared, then a new chief would take his place. There were many who had wanted to replace Great Chief Evander for a long time, but they hadn't found a good reason to do so. Now, William presented them with an opportunity that they could use to finally end the great chief's reign over all the tribes in the Kirintur mountain once and for all. Take my words back? Sorry, but not happening, William said. Are you stupid? Even your sovereign agreed with me. If I take it back, wouldn't the esteemed excellency hit me with lightning bolts? It was at that moment when thunder roared in the heavens. The warriors who heard this knelt down on the ground because they clearly felt the divinity that accompanied it. Their god had finally made its presence known, and it seemed to be siding with William once again. Great Chief Evander's and Connell's faces turned deathly pale. They knew that now was a crucial time and they needed to turn the situation around before it was too late. Fine, you want my princess? Then I'll give her to you, Connell shouted. But in return, you will fight me in a duel? As per the laws of our domain? Do you dare accept my challenge? Connell didn't care anymore. All he wanted to do was end William's life in order to vent out the anger in his heart. You're not qualified to fight me. William gave Connell the middle finger. At the start, he really wanted to fight Connell and make the great chief agree to his demands after he won the duel. However, the current situation was already good enough. He really didn't care about Princess Ayla. Although he felt pity for her, and found her beautiful, she was just a stranger he had met for the first time. He had no obligation to help her. This is the fate of people that have chained themselves to the whim of their god, William thought. As long as the god is on their side they are invincible, but the moment they lose its favor, the northern tribes are merely castles made of sand that would easily crumble once the waves come to shore. On that day, on the third peak of chivalry, the great chief, Evander Zeke, was forced to bow his head. His ambition for the northern tribes to march and conquer the Hellan kingdom was put to an abrupt stop. Cadell covered his face in regret. If only he had refused Sir Jerkin's proposal to travel with him to the third peak of chivalry, none of this would have happened. How he wished that he could turn back time and correct the mistake that he had made. He would definitely kick William out of the mountains and ban him from setting foot in their domain for as long as he drew breath. Chapter 252, Distant Relative. Well, that sure was something, Alaric, the crown prince of the Zealand dynasty, said with a smile. Aren't you happy? You don't have to marry a barbarian anymore. Princess Ayla, who was seated opposite him, had a calm expression on her face as she drank her tea. They were currently inside the tent where they stayed after arriving at the third peak of chivalry. William's appearance had put a stop to their plans to use the northern tribes as the hammer that would hit the Hellan kingdom from behind, while the two dynasties faced them on the front lines. Ah, right, your ex-husband candidate said that he's giving you to the knight commander of the Hellan kingdom, Prince Alaric teased her half-sister. Do you want to go with him? I personally don't mind if you do that. Princess Ayla placed the teacup on the table before looking at her elder brother. Surely you jest, big brother. Our father is going to attack the Hellan kingdom soon, why should I stay behind enemy lines? If you go back, you will definitely suffer. You also understand that, don't you? Prince Alaric propped his chin up using his fist and smiled at his little sister. Since your purpose for coming here was in vain, father might get angry and marry you off to the son of the minister of war that you hate so much. Princess Ayla's hands trembled as she thought about marrying the most notorious womanizer in their dynasty. That man was 3 years older than her and had the body size of a pig. The only reason why he was able to have his way was due to his father's influence. The second princess would rather die than marry the bastard pig that had ruined the lives of countless women in the Zealand dynasty. Princess Ayla looked at her big brother and saw that the smile had disappeared from his face and was now replaced by a serious expression. Ayla, I cannot guarantee that I will be able to protect you if we return to the palace, Prince Alaric said. Someone is whispering in father's ears and is urging him to go to war. Right now, the Zealand dynasty is not a safe place for you to stay. So you're telling me that the most dangerous place is the safest place, big brother. That's right. Also, I can write a letter to that person and ask him to take care of you. In a way, that knight commander is a distant relative of mine. Distant relative? Princess Ayla asked in confusion. What do you mean? The smile on Prince Alaric's face returned as he thought of the uncanny work of fate that brought him to the Kirintur mountains and personally saw a distant cousin of his that was staying in the Hellan kingdom. My grandmother and the knight commander's grandmother were twins. Lord Ainsworth fell in love with her when she went to the Hellan kingdom to meet the previous king for a missionary mission. Alaric shared his story. Back then, Lady Urza was the foreign ambassador for our dynasty. The two of them hit it off pretty quickly and became lovers for a few years before finally deciding to settle down and marry. I'm sure that the esteemed Lord Ainsworth, who crushed all of Lady Urza's suitors back in the Zealand dynasty, wouldn't mind this small favor of mine. Princess Ayla's eyes widened in surprise when she discovered this unbelievable backstory. Who would have thought that the current crown prince of a dynasty, and the knight commander of the Hellan kingdom were distant relatives? Big brother, please, be honest with me, Princess Ayla pleaded. Is there really no chance of turning the situation around? I don't mind marrying a barbarian as long as our father will be happy. After all, this is for the sake of our homeland. Prince Alaric shook his head. Nothing will change even if you marry Connell. The Zeke family is in a precarious situation right now. Great Chief Evander might lose his position and, even if he remains as the Great Chief, the Northern Tribe's expedition towards the south is over. I don't see any value in marrying you off to a faction that can only stand on the sidelines while we wage war on the front lines. Also, I am not too keen on this war. I feel like we are merely puppets being played by a puppeteer from behind. This leaves a very bad aftertaste in my mouth. Prince Alaric had already discovered that there was an organization inside their domain that had been pushing for this war to happen. At first, they were only whispering in the ears of the Minister of War. Now, they were the advisors of the king. He found all of this very fishy and he didn't like it one bit. The Crown Prince extended his hand and held Princess Ayla's trembling hand in a firm grip. Hide in the Hellan Kingdom for the time being. At least, that way, you will not be immediately married to that pig. Once we win the war, I will come and find you. And if we lose? Princess Ayla inquired. She was loyal to her homeland, but after seeing William's performance, she was having second guesses whether they would succeed in the upcoming war. If we lose then we lose, Prince Alaric said casually. To be honest, I hope that we will lose this war. Maybe that is what father needs to wake up from his delusions. Big brother. Listen, Ayla, and listen well. Remember, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Everything has a price. I'm afraid that the price we paid for getting a share of the Hellan Kingdom was something that we will regret in the future. Prince Alaric was an ambitious person, but he was not stupid and short-sighted. War would cause many of their people to die. This was an inevitable thing. However, dying for a greater cause and dying as chess pieces were two different things. Upted chapters and nfelben.com. Prince Alaric would not mind dying for his homeland, but he would never accept dying as a pawn to help someone else achieve their goals. Once I return, I will get to the bottom of this, Prince Alaric swore in his heart. Father, I hope that you know what you're doing. Meanwhile, somewhere on the third peak of chivalry, the chiefs of each tribe were currently discussing important matters. The bride selection ceremony had already become a farce, and the other chiefs were no longer interested in presenting their young ladies to become Connell's brides. The second warrior was put under house arrest by Great Chief Evander in order to prevent him from doing something stupid due to anger. Liam, the first warrior, was currently guarding him and making sure that he stayed inside the main residence of the Great Chief. Although none of the other tribal chiefs were telling Great Chief Evander to step down, they had already told him that they were not satisfied with his unilateral decision to cooperate and angering their god in the process. Great Chief Evander cursed them in his heart because these same men were those who had supported him wholeheartedly when he told them that they would expand their territories by joining the two dynasties in a pincer attack. He swore that after he managed to keep his position, he would ensure to deal with each and every one of them. While they were in the middle of their talks, a beautiful lady, who seemed to be in her late 20s, suddenly appeared before them. The Great Chief and the tribal chiefs immediately knelt and bowed their heads to pay homage. We greet you, Great Oracle. Raise your heads. All the men raised their heads and looked at the holy maiden that resided on the first peak of divinity. She was the one and only messenger of their god. Seeing her here right now could only mean one thing, and that was, did His Excellency say anything, oh, Holy One? Great Chief Evander asked. He was feeling very anxious right now because he was afraid that their god would punish him for his actions. Yes, the Great One wants to talk to the interesting boy who made all of you look like clowns in a circus. His Excellency is very, very displeased right now. He also said that the new Great Chief of the tribe will be chosen by the boy as well. But that will have to wait until the two of them have talked. Now, pass on my orders and escort him to the first peak of divinity. Don't keep His Excellency waiting. After saying her words, she vanished and turned into an icy mist that flew towards the first peak of divinity. The tribal chiefs glanced at each other before hurrying to find William. All of them were thinking the same thing. This was the opportunity that they were waiting for. As long as they managed to make a good first impression on the boy, and agree to his demands, the position as the Great Chief of the tribe was as good as theirs. Great Chief Evander looked bitterly at the group of old men who had already had a head start. He never dreamed that he would have to curry for the favor of the same person who had brought him to his knees. Fortunately, there was one more card that he could play, and that was none other than pairing him with his granddaughter, Brianna. Since the half-elf already owned her, he couldn't possibly return her like some used thing. This was the law of their domain. Even their god recognized it. He hoped that, with his granddaughter's help, he would be able to keep his position and ride out the storm that had befallen their family. Chapter 253, The Law of Equivalent Exchange. Is there something that you need, Lord William? An old man with a crooked nose asked with a big smile on his face. Our tribe is willing to accommodate your every command. You already have 2 beautiful wives by your side, but we could add more if you want to. Such a handsome and chivalrous young man like you will have no problem having a dozen wives. Don't listen to him, Sir William, another old man, who had the same sturdy build as William's grandfather, James, said as he patted the boy's shoulder. Our tribe produces the most beautiful and excellent fighters in the northern regions. If Lord William makes any number of them his wife, then they would definitely give birth to handsome and strong warriors just like your grace. Nonsense. Our tribe has the most beautiful ladies. Ha, you old crook, why don't you just kick the bucket already? You're already this old and you're still playing matchmaker? Go home and just lay quietly to the side. Shoo. William was using all of his willpower to prevent his lips from twitching as over a dozen old men tried to ingratiate themselves to him. He was having some afternoon tea with Wendy and Amelia when this group suddenly barged inside their tent. The half-elf thought that they were planning to fight him, but they did the opposite instead. The old men started to bribe him with beautiful wives and kept on calling him handsome, strong, chivalrous, manly, and many other positive things that made even the thick-skinned half-elf blush in embarrassment. Everyone, please calm down. William raised his hand in order to put a stop to the old men's bickering. Can one of you, please, tell me the reason for your visit? The old man with a crooked nose smiled and nodded his head, as expected of the handsome knight commander. You truly know how to cut to the chase. This old one's name is Alden. I am the tribal chief of the Kato tribe. The reason why we are here is because the Great Oracle has invited you to go to the first peak of divinity to have a meeting with the Great One. Kato bowed his head respectfully after referring to their god. We of the Kato tribe are willing to escort Lord William to the first peak of divinity and brave the dangers together. Even if we face a mountain of fire and a sea of knives, our tribe will remain by your side until the bitter end. Shameless. You old fart? How dare you promote your tribe in front of Lord William? Oi, aren't you afraid that if you force yourself to look good, your crooked nose will straighten? Alden, why don't you just sit down? Lord William, the Bowman tribe is willing to become your sword and spear to overcome the challenges together. The old men started to bicker with each other and spittle flew in the air. William frowned because this sudden change in the tribe's stance caught him by surprise. A few hours ago all of them were glaring at him. Now, all of them were acting as if he was their best friend. All of you stop talking. A commanding tone immediately silenced the rowdy crowd who was so close in having a brawl. Great Chief Evander stepped forward and his intimidating presence made the other tribal chiefs unconsciously take a step back. Although his position was being challenged at the moment, that didn't change the fact that he was still the recognized great chieftain of the allied tribes. Their long years of being subservient to him had penetrated deep inside their bones that it was hard for them to immediately shake off his hold over them. Seeing that his deterrence still had some effect, Evander made his way towards William and passed the exact words that the Great Oracle had given him. You may bring anyone you want to the Great Peak of Divinity, but know that it will not be an easy climb, Evander explained. Those who manage to reach the first peak will gain great rewards. Those who fail will return here to the third peak of chivalry. I know that the two of us have started off on the wrong foot and I have no plans to ingratiate myself to you. However, I would like to remind you that Brianna is already yours. What you do with her is up to you, but you cannot return her to the tribe. This is the law and since you have used the duel to fight for her hand, you'd better take responsibility or else, even if the gods forgive you, I won't forgive you. William faced Great Chief Evander's glare fearlessly. He didn't deny the Great Chief's words because it was true. William had fought for Brianna's hand in the name of their god and he couldn't take those words back even if he wanted to. Explore new ovals on nfelby.com. However, there was a loophole in the law and that was William could either marry Brianna, or marry her off to someone else. Since the half-elf knew that Brianna and Prince Ernest liked each other, he had already decided to play matchmaker between the two and have the adorable Loli be recognized as the youngest prince's fiancé. William may not be the smartest half-elf in the world, but he understood what Great Chief Evander was trying to imply. The two of us are already attached at our hips, if we fall, Brianna will also fall. This was Great Chief Evander's message, and William understood the logic behind it. Let's talk after I meet with your god, William replied. As for Brianna, she already belongs to me. What I do with her is none of your business. Great Chief Evander nodded his head. William's clear, light green, eyes had already told him what he wanted to know. Deep inside, he was able to sigh in relief because there was still a chance to keep his position from getting snatched by the other tribal chiefs. By the way, what happens if I don't go to the first peak? William inquired. Great Chief Evander and the rest of the tribal chiefs looked at William as if he was the most stupid person they had seen in their life. No one in the Kirintur Mountains would dare disobey the decree that the Great One had passed down. But, the half-elf even dared to question what would happen if he didn't go. Wasn't this a very stupid thing to ask? I don't know what will happen if you don't go to the first peak, Great Chief Evander admitted. However, what I do know is that no one has defied the orders of our sovereign since the tribes made the Kirintur Mountains their home. Great Chief Evander smiled evilly at William. I'm also very curious, Knight Commander. I want to know what would happen to you if you dared to defy our god's decree. It was at that moment when all of them heard the consecutive roars of thunder across the mountain. It was like a loud laughter, but to William's half-elven ears, it sounded very ominous. Since his question had already been answered, there was no choice but to go to the first peak and meet the god of the Kirintur Mountains. William and his knight order made their journey towards the peak of divinity under the watchful eyes of the warriors of the northern tribe. Since none of them were invited, they couldn't accompany William on his journey. The greatest glory in their lifetime was to have the opportunity to meet their god at least once in their life. They envied William because it was very clear that their sovereign looked at him kindly. The moment William's party reached the second peak of enlightenment, a powerful blizzard reigned over them. Visibility was almost zero and they could only see a foot in front of their faces. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew over them which scattered their formation. William reached out to hold Wendy's hand, but he was already too late. Wendy and the rest of his knight order were blown away by the wind and were nowhere to be found. Wendy, answer me, William shouted as he tried to look for his comrades. Amelia, Ian, Bruno, Brutus, where are you guys? William shouted over and over again, but only the howling of the wind answered him back. On the first peak of divinity, Ella stood straight and looked down over her beloved. She then glanced at the humanoid goat that was kneeling beside her. Don't give him and his friends any special treatment, Ella ordered. William is not a vase that will easily break. The humanoid goat that was over 3 meters tall bowed its head in a respectful manner. The wings behind its back unfurled as it stood up. The sovereign of the mountains then glanced at the boy that was stranded inside the blizzard. He felt envious of him, but held no malice for the boy. Since he was the one chosen by their goddess, then it was only natural that he recognized him as well. As you wish, Lady Amalthea, the demigod replied. It then clenched its fist and allowed the Peak of Enlightenment to activate. The Peak of Enlightenment was a trial for the warriors of the Northern Tribe. If they successfully cleared it, they would be able to gain great rewards. Of course, if they didn't succeed, then they would have to pay a price as well. After all, the Peak of Enlightenment followed one law and one law only, and that was the law of equivalent exchange. Chapter 254, My Name is Will Part 1. FCK. William cursed as he found himself falling in what seemed to be a bottomless pit. Just a few minutes ago, he and his comrades were traversing the path to the Peak of Enlightenment when a blizzard suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Then a gust of wind blew everyone away from each other. William was about to look for his friends when the ground under his feet opened up and sucked him in, which brought him to his current predicament. The boy did everything in his power to stop his fall, but it was all in vain. He couldn't communicate with his system and none of the artifacts in his possession was working. After struggling on what felt like hours, the boy finally gave up and ceased all activities. Just when he thought that he would keep on free-falling for all eternity, a light appeared below him and then, he fell face first on solid ground. Pay. William spat the grass, and dirt, from his mouth as he hurriedly propped himself off the ground. He scanned his surroundings to see if there was any danger around him. The sun was about to set, leaving the sky with an orange glow. William frowned when he realized that he seemed to be in a flower field in the middle of nowhere. He was about to look behind him when he heard a sound coming from his back. William turned his head to look at the owner of the voice. His body stiffened when his gaze landed on a lady who seemed to be in her late teens. She had long black hair and her eyes were the same pair of eyes that made his heart skip a beat a lifetime ago. The young lady, who was as beautiful as a painting, looked back at the boy that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere in shock. She had come here to admire the sunset, like she usually did every day, and had never experienced something like this before. However, for some reason, the heart inside her chest started to beat wildly. It was as if it was seeing an old friend that it hadn't seen for years. Bell. William stuttered. He could hear his own heartbeat as the emotions that laid dormant inside his heart started to resurface uncontrollably. No, this must be a dream or an illusion, William muttered as his eyes focused on the girl in front of him. That's right. This is just an illusion. How could this be real? I was on the Peak of Enlightenment when a blizzard happened. William did his best to calm his emotions. His brain was telling him that everything he was seeing was not real. However, his heart was telling him that this was reality. While he was waging an inner battle with himself, the young lady stood up and looked at him in a guarded manner. Who are you? Why do you know my name? Belle asked. What are you doing on our property? William stopped his mumbling and stared at her. It was at that moment when he realized that he had missed her so much that even hearing her voice was making his heart ache. A tear fell, followed by another. Soon, more tears streamed down on William's face as the floodgates and his heart burst open. He, who had hardened his heart from the darkness of humanity, wasn't able to stop the flood of emotions that had accumulated for many years. William stared at Belle as if trying to burn her image in his soul. He didn't care anymore if this was a dream or an illusion. What was important was that she was here, right now. Seeing that the younger boy was crying, the beautiful lady felt alarmed and hurriedly approached him. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Belle asked. She then scanned William's body for injuries. What's your name? William's lips trembled as he gave out his name. My name is Will. Will? Your name is Will? What is your surname? Ainsworth. Belle pondered for a while before shaking her head. Sorry, but I don't recall anyone in this town with that name, Belle replied. However, don't worry. I will ask my servants to help you find your family later. William had no recollection of what happened next. He felt lightheaded and he couldn't think straight. All he knew was that Belle held his hand and took him back to her villa so he could change his clothes. Did you buy this from a cosplay shop? Belle asked. This is very well made. Unfortunately, there is some damage here and there. From the looks of it, it seems to have been scorched by fire. Not fire, but acid, William said internally as he put on the clothes that were lent to him by Belle. He had just finished taking a bath and changed into a set of clothes that belonged to Belle's younger brother who was studying in the city. I'll ask the maid to have this washed, Belle stated with a determined expression. I'll also ask them to patch this up. Don't worry, Will. I'll make sure that this will become as good as new. William could only nod his head and thank the over-enthusiastic girl. This was the first time he had seen Belle act this animated. Back then, she would always have that distant and aloof expression on her face when she was in the academy. Those ears of yours look so real. Belle's eyes sparkled as she stared at William's ears. Who is the character that you're portraying? Is he an anime or game character? Upted chapters and nfelben.com. William unconsciously touched his half-elven ears. Although they were not as pointy as that of an elf, they were still pointer than that of a normal human's. Actually they are real, William said in a half-teasing voice. I am actually a half-elf. Yes, and I'm actually a fairy. But, you are a fairy. You're still young, but you sure know how to compliment the ladies. Belle smiled sweetly as she patted William's head. She didn't know why, but she felt very close to him as if she had known him for a very long time. The moment her eyes saw him, she felt as if something that had been missing in her life had finally reappeared and it made her feel complete. Can I touch them? Belle asked. William nodded. Of course. Belle's soft and delicate hands moved to touch William's ears. She kneaded them with her fingers while trying to find the hidden attachment that made the ears pointy. A minute later, she took back her hands and her expression became serious. No way, Belle muttered. She then grabbed William's hands and looked straight in his eyes. Are you really a half-elf? Like one of those characters in fantasy books? Can you use a bow? Can you use magic? Do you know Legolas? Belle's barrage of questions made William chuckle. Since he couldn't access his system and artifacts, the half-elf thought that he was in some sort of dreamlike state. Because of this he was not afraid to hide that he was a real half-elf and answered all of Belle's questions. The only thing he didn't reveal was his real identity. He was afraid that the moment he told Belle the truth, this dream of his would break into 1,000 pieces. Who is this girl? Ella thought as she looked at the pool of water in front of her. Is this the world where William lived his past life? She was currently seated beside a spring, watching William and his trial. Ella was very curious because she had never seen this girl before. With a glance, she could tell that William loved the girl. Like a mother appraising her future daughter-in-law, Ella's eyes narrowed as she observed the two's interaction in the spring. Well, she's not half bad, Ella said with a smile. A plan was brewing inside her mind as she thought of her beloved. What she wanted was William's happiness. Since that was the case, she was willing to pull some strings in the background to make William's dreams come true. Chapter 255, My Name is Will Part 2. Are you for real? Belle exclaimed. You're really a half-elf. Belle couldn't believe that Will was the real deal. She only thought that the boy was one of those cosplayers that liked to go to conventions while portraying their favorite characters. Never in her wildest dreams did she think that she would meet a real, breathing, fantasy creature, in the flower field right outside their villa. Can you cast magic? Belle asked. I can't, William replied. My powers are currently sealed. Then, can you tell me more about your world? It is a very long story. Are you sure you want to hear it? Definitely. Belle listened to William's tale. The boy said that he was born in the Elven continent, then taken to a town called Lant and was raised by my relatives and a goat named Ella. William also told her about the exciting battles against magical beasts and the people he met along the road to the temple. I think Est and Ian are traps, Belle said. Either that or both of them are girls in disguise. Est and Ian are girls. William snorted. Impossible. I've been around them for a long time. Do you really think that I can't differentiate between a boy and a girl? Especially that snot-nosed pansy. If he was really a girl, I'd spell my name backwards. Haven't you heard about women's intuition? Belle smiled mischievously. Most of the time I'm right, and this is one of those occasions when I think that I am right. Something is off with your intuition then. How mean? William was about to continue the story when they were interrupted by Belle's maidservants. It was time for dinner, and the head maid had ordered them to bring the food inside Belle's room because she seemed to be having a good time with their guest. Although she didn't know where William had come from, the head maid was a good judge of character. This was also the first time that she had seen their young lady so happy that she didn't dare to destroy it. She had been depressed for a long time after the operation. Her father decided to let her spend some time in the villa to recover. He was hoping that the lush scenery and the fresh air of the countryside would improve her mood. After the two finished their dinner, Belle told William more of her observations. This girl Wendy is really in love with you, Belle said like an expert in romantic relationships. You better treat her well. However, your ex-roommate Kenneth, isn't this like one of those soap operas when a girl pretends to be a guy to be near the guy she likes? You sure have a wild imagination, William replied. You watched too many dramas. Oh, you know about dramas? Does your world have any modern technology? Based on what you said earlier, I thought that it was a pure fantasy world. Is it sci-fi? Do you have spaceships? Interstellar travel? Forget about what I said about dramas. My world is pure fantasy. The half-elf scratched his cheek as if reprimanding himself for saying something unnecessary. Belle just smiled and didn't pry any further. She felt that Will was hiding a few things from her, but it didn't matter. She was not the kind of lady who would force people to tell her their secrets. Still, you should pay extra attention to Est and Ian, Belle insisted. As for Kenneth, he's still 50-50. He could be a trap or a real girl in disguise. Okay, William replied half-heartedly. Belle knew that the boy was only agreeing on the surface, but he had no intention to find out whether her conjectures were true or not. You know, something is bothering me. Belle leaned her back on the chair she was sitting on. And that is? William asked. You have many bride candidates around you. Let's not talk about the unconfirmed Est, Ian, and Kenneth. Rebecca, Wendy, Amelia, and even that little girl Brianna. But, are you planning to become a harem protagonist? Belle's gaze locked on at William. For a brief moment, William thought that the girl was looking at him like he was some kind of scum. You know, harem protagonists are the worst, Belle added without mercy. How can they have so many girls? Isn't that being unfaithful? Now tell me, are you planning to have a harem? The half-elf coughed lightly as his eyes wandered around the room. Clearly, he didn't want to answer this touchy subject. Will, I know that polygamy is not banned in your world. However, you must promise me that you will not go after girls willy-nilly and not care about their feelings at all, Belle said with a serious expression. If you do that I will cross between worlds and pull on your ears until they detach. Do I make myself clear? Yes. William lowered his head. His dejected expression made Bella's expression soften. She didn't want to admit it, but she felt a little irritated when the handsome boy mentioned the names of the girls around him. Why am I feeling this way? Belle thought. Is it because Will is the only boy I have interacted with aside from William? Their names are very similar as well. When Belle thought of the sickly boy that would often steal glances of her while she was in the archery club, she wasn't able to stop herself from feeling sad. William noticed the sudden change in her mood and thought that it was due to him being a harem protagonist. He immediately stood up and held her hand and looked into her eyes. Belle, I am not someone who takes relationships lightly. Please, believe me, William said with a serious expression on his face. For a brief moment, the sickly boy's face in her memories overlapped with William until the two of them became one. Belle, William asked. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Upted chapters and nfelben.com. I am fine, Belle replied as her hand unconsciously gripped William's hand. It's already late. We can continue our talks tomorrow. Since you have no place to go, you can stay in this residence until we figure out a way to send you back. Belle didn't know how or why the half-elf suddenly appeared in her world. However, one thing was certain, she wanted to know more about the red-headed boy in front of her. You don't have to worry about that, William replied. I think I will return to my world after 3 days' time. 3 days? Belle asked in surprise. How do you know that you will return in 3 days? I just know. Call it a half-elf's intuition. That thing actually exists. Yes, William replied as he looked at the ticking counter that had suddenly appeared on his status screen. 71, 57, 06. The timer had suddenly appeared after Belle's change in expression. William didn't know what triggered the timer, but he felt half happy, and sad, at the sudden development. Happy because he knew that after the timer ended, he would be sent back to Hestia. Sad, because it will also mark the end for his brief encounter with the girl that he had loved a lifetime ago. Chapter 256, The Ending of a Fairy Tale Part 1. The next day, William and Belle spent the day walking around the countryside. Before they left the house, Belle made William wear an eye patch and a pirate hat that she had unearthed from the attic. To top it off, she even found her little brother's pirate costume that he once used during a school play. She intended to hide William's identity by making him cosplay. Naturally, Belle also decided to join him and ask the maids to remodel a set of her clothes to resemble a pirate costume. William found this quite interesting and agreed to Belle's proposal. With his disguise, the two was able to spend the day walking hand in hand around town. William noticed that stalls were being built along the way leading towards the temple of the town. There were also decorations being hung around the main plaza which gave off a very festive vibe in the air. Is there some sort of festival going on? William asked as they passed through the stalls that were being arranged side by side. Have you heard of the Star Festival? Belle asked. In our world, there is a story about a shepherd who tended goats and a celestial maiden that weaves beautiful dresses. The two fell in love with each other, and the gods bestowed upon them their blessings. However, their story didn't end with a happily ever after. Due to their intense love for each other, both of them neglected their duties. The celestial maiden stopped weaving, and the shepherd stopped tending his herd. The gods became angry and separated the two of them from each other. William continued walking, but the hand that held Belle's tightened. Of course, he knew about the story of the star-crossed lovers. After the two were separated, the gods took pity on both of them and allowed them to meet once a year. Every year, on that same day, the two would spend a day in each other's embrace. When the day was over, the two of them would once again be separated for another year until the fated day when they would be reunited again. Back then, William didn't think much about this tradition because he couldn't relate to it. Now, it all sounded like it was a tailor-made festival just for him. Do you know how to weave clothes? William asked as he looked up at the taller girl walking beside him. No, I'm not good with needles, Belle replied. But I am good at archery. Why don't we have an archery match tomorrow? You said you're also proficient with the bow, right? 7c at nfelb/n.c/m for L test bells. Sure. I'll give you a handicap. Just because you are a half-elf you think you can beat me in archery? Remember, William, I am 5 years older than you. You forget that I'm a half-elf. What makes you think that you're older than me? How can you be older than me? Belle patted William's head. Look at you, you're so small. William wanted to retort, but Belle's soft hand, that was patting his head, felt so comfortable that he decided that it was not worth it. He only had a few days to spend with her, and he wished to make every second count. Even though William wished that he could stop time and let this moment last forever, he knew that it was not possible. Just like the sands falling down in an hourglass, 2.5 days passed like a fleeting dream. The day of the festival arrived and William accompanied Belle to the temple. It was currently 5 in the afternoon and the two were checking all the stalls along the way to the temple. William felt his heart aching with every minute that passed. He wasn't able to stop himself from checking the timer on his status page every now and then to see what little time he had remaining. 04, 59, 09. I will return to my world at 10 o'clock, William thought with a sigh. Although he was feeling depressed, he kept a smile plastered on his face. Oh, what a cute couple, a charming voice called out to William and Belle as they walked past a stall. Young man, why don't you buy your girlfriend an accessory to commemorate this special occasion? William and Belle glanced at each other before walking towards the stall of the lady who was wearing a veil on her face. For some reason, the lady's stall reminded William of the stalls found in the Temple of 10,000 Gods, the place where the gods gave contracts to people whom they deemed worthy to enter the temple's doors. Take a good look at these accessories, the sales lady said enthusiastically. I guarantee that all of them are high-quality items. Belle's eyes sparkled because all the accessories were very beautiful and well made. As a young lady from a rich and influential family, she could easily tell that they were genuine and not fake accessories. Because of this, she also knew that they were very expensive. How much is this? William pointed at a golden necklace with a blue jewel embedded at its center. That would be 40 million, the sales lady answered. I'm willing to give you a discount and sell it to you for 38 million. William's hand that was about to touch the necklace immediately retreated. What? This is 40 million. Yes. Why are you selling expensive things at a stall and not a jewelry store? Aren't you afraid that people might steal them from you? Don't worry, young man. Anyone who dares to steal from me will not have a good ending. The sales lady patted her chest with confidence. I guarantee this on my name. What is your name? Freya. William rubbed his face. He thought that the lady was either making fun of him, or thought of him as a gullible child who didn't know who Freya was. He had also read Norse mythology during his free time, and Freya was the goddess of love, beauty, fertility, war, and death. However, among the many attachments to her name, everyone agreed that her main role was the goddess of love and beauty. While William and the sales lady were chatting, Belle's gaze unconsciously landed on a silver ring. There was nothing special about the ring. It was just a plain silver ring without any decorations, and yet, it held a very strong attraction to her. How much is this silver ring? Belle inquired. The lips of the sales lady behind the veil curled up into a smile. If William and Belle were to see it, they would immediately be charmed by how beautiful her smile was. You have good eyes, young lady, the sales lady said with an approving tone. This silver ring is part of a pair. The name of this ring is called the Ring of Vega and its counterpart the Ring of Altair. Legend has it that if two people were to exchange and wear these rings, no matter how far away they are from each other, they would eventually be reunited. Just like the legend of the star-crossed lovers. William looked at the silver ring and felt his heart skip a beat. Although he knew that the sales lady was merely saying these things to make a sale, the promise to be able to be reunited once again resonated with his heart and soul. How much is it? William asked. You can't buy this with money, young man, the sales lady said in a teasing tone. Then how? William inquired. Since it is in this stall, it means that you intend to sell it, right? The sales lady nodded and picked up the silver ring. Young man, the price of this ring is a promise, the sales lady said. I will sell it to you if you promise me one thing. A promise? Yes, a promise. What kind of promise? William asked. Since this ring represents love, the promise you must fulfill is also one of love, the sales lady replied. You will be unable to refuse this promise. No matter what happens, you will do it, regardless of the price you have to pay. Can you make this promise? Chapter 257, The Ending of a Fairy Tale Part 2. William frowned. A voice inside his head was telling him that he shouldn't underestimate the sales lady's words. Belle, who was standing beside William, grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the stall. The black-haired beauty half-dragged William towards the temple without saying a word. The sales lady watched the two of them with a smile hidden under her veil. She had already given William a choice, whether he accepted it or not, was his own choice. As William and Belle walked towards the stairs of the temple, a gentle breeze blew and whispered something in William's ears. Star-crossed lovers, heartache, and regret. When I look in your eyes, I wish that we had never met. 3:55:42. After the incident at the stall, the two wandered around the temple before offering their prayer to the deity that was said to be the patron of the temple. Ironically, the deity of the temple was said to be the deity of love and reunions. As someone who had met real gods and deities, William closed his eyes and clasped his hands together. He prayed. He prayed with all his might to allow him to spend more time with Belle. He poured out his heart in his prayer, hoping that his words would reach the patron deity that governed over love and reunions. Belle had finished her prayer and looked sideways at the handsome half-elf that had been with her for the past 2.5 days. William had told her that he would return to his world at exactly 10 in the evening. Belle had only spent such a short time with him, but something deep inside her wanted to hold on to him and never let go. And she did just that. While William was praying, she hugged him from behind. At first, William was surprised, but he once again closed his eyes and resumed his prayer. Belle was 2 heads taller than William, and if one was to look at them from the side, they would think that the two of them were brother and sister. Finally, William finished his prayer. As if both of them had an agreement, they walked away from the crowd and looked for a place where the two of them could be alone together. According to the staff, there will also be a firework display, Belle said as she sat beside William. The two of them went to a small clearing that was located at the back of the temple. William looked up at the countless stars in the sky. These were the stars that he had not seen for many years. They looked both familiar and foreign to him. The stars here are different, William said softly. Will, Belle said as she held his hand. Why don't you just stay here? Stay here with me? I will look after you and make sure that you don't suffer. You don't need to fight anymore. Just, be with me, please. William gazed at her eyes and felt his heart waver. He was very tempted to say yes. I will stay with you. But each time he tried to say those words, the faces of several people flashed inside his head. They were the faces of the people that were important to him, who were on the other side where Belle didn't belong. A place where the shepherd goes to tend his sheep. A place where the weaver couldn't hope to reach. Can you hear it? William held Belle's hand and placed it over his chest. Can you feel it? This heart of mine yearns for you, and yet, I can't say yes to your proposal. Why? Belle asked. Why can't you just stay here with me? Here, where it is safe, and you don't need to risk your life to fight for a kingdom that might fall in the upcoming war. Because they need me. I need you, too. Belle hugged William in a tight embrace. I need you, too, William. William felt something wet fall on his head as Belle's body trembled. You promised me, Belle said between sobs. You said that the next time we met that you would never let me go. You promised me. William felt like a lump was stuck to his throat as Belle poured her feelings over him. He never mentioned who he really was, but for some reason, Belle was able to guess his true identity. The half-elf wrapped his arms around Belle and held her tight. I wish to stay with you as well. I really do, William replied. He was doing his best not to let the tears in his eyes fall. I'm sorry, Belle, but I can't stay here with you. Belle felt her heart breaking as the emotions that she had held back for a long time exploded inside her chest. She begged William over and over, but his answer was still a no. In the end, Belle stood up and ran away with tears falling down her eyes, blurring her vision. William, you're a liar? I hate you. Those were her parting words as she ran away from the boy who had unknowingly crossed the multiverse just to see her again. William watched her go and the tears that he had been holding back fell like rain. He wanted to run after her, but he didn't have the courage to do so. He just covered his eyes with his hands as his body trembled, fighting off the longing he held for her. Back then, he was not able to be with her because of his illness. Now, he was unable to stay with her because he had a duty to fulfill. 0059 Jeet the L test vels on no/v/elbin. C/om. Ding. Do you wish to remain in this world? Yes/no. William opened his eyes as he stared at the string of words that appeared on his status page. He was sure that when the timer reset, he would be sent back to his world. However, this time, a new option appeared. I can stay. William was half in doubt when he saw the system message blinking in front of him. For a moment he thought he was imagining things, but after wiping the tears from his eyes, he realized that what he was seeing was real. He didn't make a decision right away. Instead, he walked back to the temple shrine, then down the stairs, until he reached the stall where the accessories were being sold. Looks like you've broken up with your girlfriend. The sales lady teased the boy who hadn't even bothered to wipe the tear stains from his face. You said that you will sell me the ring for a promise, right? William asked. The sales lady nodded. As this ring represents the promise of love, I shall make a request as one who also loves. I wish to save the one I love. If you promise me that in the future you will help me save him, I will give you the ring. He resides in your world, so if you choose to take this ring, you will have to return to your world. The choice is yours to make. Do you want me to write a contract or make an oath? William inquired. I will do it. There's no need for that, the lady chuckled in an almost musical tone. I believe that you are someone who will not take back your word. The sales lady took the silver ring from her collection and gave it to William. Here you go, the sales lady said. The ring of Vega is yours. Thank you, William replied. No need to thank me, after all, it is not free. The sales lady patted the boy's head. Go. Every second counts. William nodded his head and left the temple grounds. He ran with all of his might towards Belle's villa. He wanted to see her, to hold her, and tell her how much he loved her with the little time he had left. Chapter 258, The Ending of a Fairy Tale Part 3. When William's back disappeared from view, the sales lady giggled as she leaned back on her chair. Looks like I won the bet, so what will you do, young lady? The sales lady asked. Belle walked out from behind the stall and looked in the direction where William ran. She bit her lip as she thought of the last words that she had said to him a while ago. She felt guilty and embarrassed because she tried to use William's promise to bind him to her. The sales lady presented a small box to Belle and opened it. All I need as payment is a promise, the sales lady said. The choice is yours to make. William stopped at the gate of the residence panting for breath. He had run all the way from the temple only to arrive as soon as he could. However, when he asked the guard if Belle had returned, the latter said that the young lady was still not inside the residence. William didn't believe him and entered the house to look for Belle. It didn't take long for him to realize that the guard didn't lie to him and hurriedly went out to look for her. He ran back to the temple but the girl he was searching for wasn't there. William looked everywhere, but still couldn't find her. In the end, William walked dejectedly to the place where they first met. 001425. Do you wish to remain in this world? Yes/no. William stood in the middle of the flower field as he looked at the stars in the sky. All it would take was for him to select yes, and the pain and suffering would end. However, he didn't do that. There were things that he couldn't leave behind. He couldn't be selfish. There were people who were waiting for his return. I just want to see you one last time, William said softly. It was at that moment when something exploded in the sky and a beautiful golden flower appeared in the darkness. Soon, several more fireworks painted the darkness with an array of colors. William watched them silently. The fireworks display lasted for 5 minutes before coming to an end. The fleeting beauty disappeared and the sky once again was bathed in darkness. Suddenly, a pair of slender arms hugged him from behind. William looked up to see a beautiful face right next to him. Belle lowered her head and planted a soft kiss on William's lips. When the kiss ended, William faced her and wrapped his arms around her. He then stood on tiptoe to kiss the girl he had loved for many years. The two kissed and kissed and kissed until they ran out of breath. 000720. Do you wish to remain in this world? Yes/no. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said those words to you, Belle said. I was being selfish. William buried his face on her chest and listened to her heartbeat. Belle, I love you. Always have, always will. Now and forever. Belle hugged him and kissed his head lovingly. So you say, but you have so many girls waiting for you back in that fantasy world of yours. I'm sure that you will forget about me soon. I will not, William said firmly. For the past 14 years of my life, I have always kept you in my heart. Belle felt something warm spread on her chest when she heard that William had always kept her in his heart, even though he was living a new life in another world. You know it's funny, Belle said as she brushed William's head. You spent 14 years in that world, while here, only a year has passed. Well, I'm not going to complain. At least you didn't find an old hag when you returned. That would be the worst. William reluctantly pulled back from Belle's warmth and softness and looked straight into her eyes. He then took out a ring from his pocket and gently placed it on her ring finger. Belle, for me, you are the beginning of a letter, the contents of a poem, the ending of a fairy tale, William said after he finished putting the ring on Belle's finger. I don't know what the future holds, but I will do my best to find you. Once again, William rose on tiptoe to kiss the woman he loved. He couldn't get enough of kissing her and wished that he had more time. If he could only pause the annoying timer on his status page, he would have paid 1 million God points to do it. After their short, love-filled kiss ended, Belle took out a ring from her own pocket and placed it on William's ring finger. William's eyes widened in shock as he looked at the ring on his finger. He then looked at Belle anxiously because he understood the meaning of her gesture. Don't worry, it's not as bad as you think. Belle ruffled William's hair. Do your best to find me, because if you can't do that, I will have no choice but to find you. 000348. Do you wish to remain in this world? Yes/no. Let us make some ground rules before you return to your world, Belle said with a serious expression. If you marry dozens of wives, I will castrate you. Okay, William replied. I didn't intend to have dozens of wives in the first place. You can marry 9 people. Whether they are wives or concubines, I don't care. However, you are not allowed to have more than 9. Belle stated. If you surpass that number, you'd better not show yourself to me, or I'll make sure to fight you to the death. Do I make myself clear? Yes, ma'am. William nodded his head like a henpecked husband. But, why does the number amount to 9? Because it is the, never mind. Just make sure that you don't surpass that number, or I will hate you for life. Get the latest chapters on n/felbin.com. Okay, I promise. 000153. Do you wish to remain in this world? Yes/no. You don't have much time left, Belle cupped William's face. Let's not waste it. William agreed with her wholeheartedly as he raised his head. Their lips once again pressed against each other as they savored their last kiss together. 000036. 000015. 000008. 000003. 000000. I love you, Belle. I love you too, Will. See you later. See you soon. Also, that girl, Wendy. Treat her well. I will. I promise. William's body glowed and slowly turned into particles of light. The light flew towards the sky and bathed Belle with its golden light. When the light finally receded, Belle knelt on the ground and covered her face with her hands. Her pained sobs echoed in the quiet night, for her star-crossed lover was no longer in her sight. Chapter 259, Let's Meet Again When the Sky Falls. William looked at the ring on his ring finger when the light around him receded. He could still feel Belle's warmth on his body, and the lingering sweetness of her kiss on his lips. The red-headed boy stood there in a daze, completely oblivious of his surroundings. It was as if he was trying to hold on to the memory of his star-crossed lover that was now far beyond his reach. Suddenly, a light cough brought him out of his trance. William sighed and raised his head to look at the beautiful woman in front of him wearing priestess clothes. Congratulations on passing the trial of enlightenment, the Oracle of the Peak of Divinity said with a smile. Come with me, our sovereign wants to have a chat with you. William nodded his head and followed behind the oracle. He wanted to meet the demigod that governed the Kirintar Mountains and personally thank him for the opportunity that was given to him. The two walked for 10 minutes before arriving at a white gate that was over 10 meters tall. Several golden runes were written on its surface and they twinkled like the stars in the sky. The oracle raised her hand and the gates swung open. William couldn't see what was inside the room because his sight was blocked by a white mist. Even so, he walked forward with steady steps and entered the room fearlessly. He had only walked a few steps into the room when the gates closed behind him. Over here, young shepherd, a confident and domineering voice called out to him. William walked towards the voice with a calm expression. Soon, the mist started to recede and he came face to face with a 3-meter-tall humanoid goat with its wings spread wide. A black, 5-pointed star, pentacle, could be seen on its forehead and its golden eyes stared at William like it was appraising a rare species of animal. William felt like the goat looked familiar because he had seen it somewhere before. He pondered for a while and his eyes widened in shock when he finally recognized that demigod that was standing before him. Baphomet, William muttered as he unconsciously took a step back. Oh, you know my father. The humanoid goat's gaze softened when he heard William mention his father's name. I didn't know that he was popular in the lower realm. Even so, it's good to know that his name is not forgotten. The goat unfurled his wings as he sat on the white throne behind him. He then propped the side of his face on his fist as he crossed his legs, to once again stare at the boy whom the goddess has chosen. I already know your name, but it would be best if we introduced ourselves to each other like civilized beings, the demigod said. The tribes of the Kirinter Mountains call me the Great One, for I do not want them to know my real name. However, for you, I will make an exception. You may call me by my name, Takom. 7 C at N/N. C/M for L test bells. Takom. The King of Goats. Demigod. Threat level, calamity, low. Can be added to the herd. Success rate. 0.00000000000000000000000000000001%. Aside from the general information of the being in front of him, William wasn't able to know more about the demigod that ruled over the tribes of the northern region. The red-headed boy pressed his fist over his chest and gave a brief bow. William von Ainsworth. It's an honor meeting you, Your Excellency. A playful smile appeared on Takom's face as he made a gesture for William to come closer. I know you have many questions. Fortunately, I have all the time in the world to answer them all, Takom said with a smile. It's very rare for me to have guests, so I'll give you the VIP treatment. Takom snapped his finger and a small table, laden with sweets, and tea appeared in front of William. With another snap of his finger, the boy found himself sitting on a chair and holding a cup of tea in his hand. Wet your throat first, Takom said in a teasing tone. You must be feeling very thirsty after kissing your girl until the last second. William wanted to retort, but decided that it was not a good idea to argue with a demigod. The latter was treating him as a guest, so it would be best if he just went with the flow for now. The tea he drank tasted oddly familiar and William drank again to confirm his suspicions. He had tasted tea like this during the 3 days that he had stayed with Belle and it felt weird tasting it again here in Hestia. Although your old world is in the lower realm, it has many interesting things, especially this Lepton iced tea. Takom chuckled. Fortunately, we were able to get this item in bulk given the small time frame that we had. William's ears perked up as he listened to the demigod. He then placed the teacup on top of the table and looked at the humanoid goat sitting on the throne. Can I go back to Earth? William asked. This was the most important question in his mind right now. If possible, he wanted to find a way to travel between worlds to be with Belle from time to time. No, is what I'd like to say, but since you already managed to get there once, I guess the possibility exists, Takom replied in a casual manner. To be frank, even I was surprised when the trial of enlightenment sent you to the lower realms. The trial was about testing one's resolve. If you had chosen to stay in your old world then you would have stayed there until your dying breath. William, do you know? A god doesn't have the power to send someone from the higher realm to the lower realm. Even if 2 gods were to work together it would still be very hard, unless both of them are extremely powerful gods. William carefully listened to Takom's explanation as if he was afraid of missing a single word. He then thought that if 1 or 2 gods can't do it, what about 4? The images of the 4 gods who had a good relationship with William appeared on his head and wondered if they were the ones responsible for his reunion with Belle. I will properly thank them the next time we meet, William swore in his heart. Back in the 10,000 temple. Lily, was it you? Gavin, no. Lily and Gavin then stared at the 2 gods that were playing a game of chess beside them. David, whistles. Issei, whistles. Lily, Gavin. William took a deep breath then asked his second question. What about my friends? William inquired. What happened to them? Don't worry about them, Takom answered. All of them have passed the trial and are now waiting for you at the main hall. This might be the first time that a group of people has succeeded in overcoming the trial of enlightenment at the same time. William sighed in relief after knowing that his friends were safe. He then talked to Takom about the difficulties of the Hellan Kingdom and the reason why he came to the Kirinter Mountains. Takom listened with a smile and waited for William to finish his explanation. I am already aware of your purpose for coming. Takom rubbed his chin. Sadly, I can't agree to your request. Why? William asked. Because this war is only the start of something more sinister and I need to preserve the strength of the northern tribes until the right moment arrives. Takom gazed in the distance as if looking past the white mists that surrounded them. You don't have to worry about the tribes stabbing you in the back. I will not allow that to happen. However, that also means that I cannot offer you any assistance. His expression didn't change, but William could tell that the demigod had already made a decision. He would not get help from the tribes during the war, but he was thankful that their planned invasion had come to a halt. You said that the war is only the start of something more sinister. What do you mean by that, Your Excellency? William inquired. William, Your Excellency. Survive the war first. Takom turned his head to look at the boy that he could easily pinch to oblivion if he felt like it. Then and only then can you come to the north to ask for assistance. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Excellency. Let's meet again when the sky falls. Those were the last words that William heard before his surroundings faded. His meeting with the demigod had come to an end, but their talk only brought more questions than answers. William was forced to put these matters aside for now because the demigod was right. He needed to survive the war first. As long as he was alive, there would be plenty of opportunities to find a way to be reunited with the beautiful lady that was waiting for him back on Earth. Chapter 260, For the Sake of My Cute Little Sister. Will. Wendy ran towards William and gave him a hug. Did you also pass the trial? I did, William replied and he returned Wendy's hug. He was surprised that after meeting Belle, his feelings for Wendy hadn't changed. It meant that the straightforward girl had managed to worm herself inside William's heart, and the latter had also recognized her as his lover candidate. Belle said that I can have up to 9 wives or concubines, William thought. I guess I'll just cross that bridge when I get there. His gaze then landed on Ian and remembered Belle's warning about him. What are you looking at? Ian asked. You look creepy. Yep. It's impossible for this snot-nosed pansy to be a girl, William muttered as he averted his gaze. Belle's intuition was wrong. The oracle had already warned them that they should keep the contents of their own trials a secret. Although they could share it with other people, she advised against it. She said that if other people were to know the contents of the trial, they would not be able to set foot in the northern regions again. Because of this, none of them asked each other what happened in their trials. They returned to the peak of chivalry because William still had loose ends to tie up. To his surprise, the representatives of the Anisha dynasty had already left, while the representatives of the Zealand dynasty remained. Sir Jerkins personally informed William that Crown Prince Alaric wanted to talk to him. Although he was surprised, William decided to meet with him after he settled the issue with the tribes. As you may already know, the Great One has appointed me to choose the next great chieftain of the tribes, William said with a serious expression. All the different tribal chiefs looked at him anxiously and waited for his next words. The Great One has also issued a decree, William continued his speech. The tribes will not participate in the war, nor will they act as the reinforcements for the Hellan kingdom. They are to stay in the northern regions until the war is over. Some of the tribal chiefs sighed, while others nodded their heads. Most of them didn't want to participate in the war because it would only cause the death of many of their tribesmen. Although the regions of the north were harsh, they weren't lacking in anything. There's more, the nearest town of Stanmore will now fall under the jurisdiction of the tribes, William said. This will be the compensation of the Hellan kingdom to the tribes for not participating in the war. Earlier, Sir Jerkins had told William that the king had told him that he could use the 3 towns near the Kirintur Mountains as bargaining chips to gain the aid of the allied tribes. However, since the demigod had forbidden them from joining the war, the bargaining chips became useless. Get the latest chapters on n/felbin.com. William knew that some of the tribal chiefs still had the notion of expansion, so he was willing to compromise and satisfy their itch. The half-elf told Jerkins that in order to prevent the tribes from joining the tri-party alliance, they needed to sacrifice one of the towns on the border in order to appease them. Jerkins readily agreed to William's suggestion because he was afraid that the tribes would really switch sides if they didn't give them some form of compensation. For the ambassador, losing one border town was better than fighting on 3 fronts of the battlefield. Just like William expected, the tribal chiefs were quite happy with the new territory they had gained for free. Even Great Chief Evander gave William a nod of admiration for his ability to compromise. Okay, now that is settled, we will talk about the position of the great chieftain of the tribe. William gazed at the tribal chiefs and completely ignored Great Chief Evander, which made the latter's smile stiffen. 4 years, William held out 4 fingers in front of everyone seated in the Great Hall. For 4 years Evander will remain in his position as the great chieftain of the tribe. After that, all the tribal chiefs will vote if he should continue to stay as the great chieftain or if he should step down from the position. If the tribal chiefs are going to ask Evander to step down after 4 years, each tribe needs to send one of their representatives to clear the trial of enlightenment. The first person to clear the trial will become the next great chief of the allied tribes. There will be no age restriction to the trial. Anyone can become the great chief, but only one representative per tribe is allowed to participate in the selection ceremony. The tribal chieftains nodded their heads in agreement. They thought that the new system was good since it prevented anyone from holding the position of great chieftain for an indefinite span of time. Great Chief Evander happily accepted the new system after confirming that members of his tribe could also participate in the selection ceremony. He knew that William had given him 4 years to remain as the great chieftain, so that Brianna wouldn't suffer. After he had settled the issues of the tribes, William asked Sir Jerkins to invite the crown prince of the Zealand dynasty to his quarters. He was very curious about what the next king of the neighboring dynasty wanted to say to him. It didn't take long before Prince Alaric came to William's tent to converse. He didn't come alone. Princess Ayla, Connell's ex-bride candidate, was with him as well. The beautiful brother and sister pair sat opposite William and looked at him with calm expressions on their faces. When I came here to the northern regions, I thought that I would only be meeting with the leaders of the different tribes, Prince Alaric said with a smile. I didn't expect that I would see a distant relative and witness his amazing battle prowess firsthand. By relative, you mean me? William asked in confusion. You might be making a mistake, Your Highness. Well, if your grandmother's name is not Urza, then yes, I may be making a mistake, the prince replied in a playful tone. Tell me, Sir William, is Lady Urza not your grandmother? She is, William replied. Great. Prince Alaric clapped his hands. Actually, your grandmother and my grandmother are twins. Lord James went to the Zealand dynasty to personally ask her parents for her hand in marriage. Naturally, they didn't agree at the start and made things difficult for him. Prince Alaric chuckled. However, Lord James was able to beat all of Lady Urza's suitors, and finally gained the approval of her parents. She then went with your grandfather to the Hellan kingdom and would just occasionally visit our domain whenever she felt homesick. Long story short, you and I are distant cousins since we share the same heritage. I see. William nodded his head in understanding. So, what does your highness need from me? Although he agreed on the surface, William didn't take the prince's words to heart. he would have to consult with his grandfather first and confirm whether what the prince had told him was true or not. Even so, he was still willing to hear what the prince had to say since the latter had waited for him to return to the third peak of chivalry. I want you to pass this letter to Lord James and also take my little sister, Princess Ayla, to meet him, Alaric replied. I know that this is an odd request from the crown prince of a dynasty that is planning to wage war on your borders, but it is still something I need to do for the sake of my cute little sister. You can do this for me, right, cousin? William frowned, but still nodded his head. Is that all? Yes, that is all. Prince Alaric smiled. Perhaps, this is the last time we will meet in such an amicable manner. The next time we see each other will be on the battlefield. Until then, make sure that you stay alive, cousin. William returned Prince Alaric's smile but said nothing else. He then looked at the beautiful princess who had been observing him since the moment she entered his tent. I hope you don't mind living in the countryside, your highness, William said. Because that is where you will be staying until the war is over. As long as there is food to eat, a bed to sleep on, and a roof over my head, I believe that I will be able to manage, Sir William, Ayla replied. I am looking forward to meeting the legendary Lord James who single-handedly defeated 100 warriors when he asked for Lady Urza's hand in marriage. Princess Ayla smiled sweetly as she gazed at William's eyes that were as beautiful as sapphires. She wanted to know more about the knight commander who was wearing a slave collar on his neck. The princess of the Zealand dynasty knew that her brother was right. It would be safer to stay in the enemy's territory than return to their domain. Because if she did return to the Zealand dynasty, all that was waiting for her was a life filled with regrets and misery. Chapter 261, A Short Visit to Lant. Inside the flying carriage, Wendy was seated on William's right, while Brianna was seated on his left. The little loli was looking starry-eyed at the scenery that she was seeing for the first time. After tying up the loose ends, William and his group, along with Sir Jerkin's entourage, left the Kirinter Mountains. The two flying carriages flew side by side as they made their way back towards the Hellan Kingdom. Don't poke your head out too much, Brianna, William said helplessly. You might fall out of the carriage window if you lean more than that. It's fine, Brianna replied while still gazing at the scenery under the flying carriage. Big brother is holding my waist, I'm not going anywhere. You're so troublesome. William sighed and the little loli just giggled in acknowledgement of his claims. The half-elf then shifted his attention to the beautiful lady with light purple hair and eyes that was seated in front of him. Ayla, the second princess of the Zealand dynasty, was also looking outside the carriage window. She had stayed in that pose ever since the flying carriage took off in the air. William wondered what her fate would have been if her marriage to Connell hadn't been interrupted. As if sensing his gaze, Princess Ayla turned her head to the side to look back at him. Is there something on my face, Lord William? Ayla asked. No, William replied. I'm still not sure what Prince Alaric was thinking when he asked me to take you to see my grandfather. My big brother might seem easygoing on the surface, but he is a worrywart at heart. Princess Ayla closed her eyes as if trying to hold back the sadness in them. He only wants the best for me, so he decided to ask a favor from you. I see. William didn't pursue the topic because he felt like Princess Ayla didn't want to continue the discussion. After a few hours, they finally arrived at the town where a teleport gate was stationed. William and Sir Jerkins had talked beforehand about their next course of action before parting ways. The ambassador was to return to the capital to inform the king about the result of their mission. William, on the other hand, would first head to London and drop off Princess Ayla before going back to the Royal Academy. To be honest, William was worried that Princess Ayla was a spy sent by the Crown Prince to monitor their movements. He hoped that his grandfather would be able to supervise her and ensure that she didn't do anything stupid while she was staying in the western edges of the Hellan Kingdom. 2 days had passed after they had left the Kirinter Mountains. It was around noon when they saw the familiar town of Lant appear before their eyes. Brianna suddenly screamed and grabbed William's arms while pointing outside the window of the carriage. There are wyverns outside. Brianna exclaimed. They are heading in our direction. Princess Ayla, who was meditating, suddenly opened her eyes and showed an anxious expression. There had been several wyvern attacks in the Zealand dynasty and the people there were very wary of wyverns. There was an occasion when her entourage was attacked by a wyvern while visiting the towns near their borders. Since then, Princess Ayla had been extra careful about not venturing into the territories where wyverns were said to hunt. Don't worry, William patted the head of the anxious loli. They are on our side. Huh. Brianna looked back at William in confusion. A few seconds later, the wyverns flew alongside the flying carriage as if they were guards protecting a VIP guest. It took Brianna a minute to realize that the wyverns were indeed not there to harm them. She then poked her head out of the carriage to stare at these notorious beasts that were often called lesser dragons in their domain. Princess Ayla had also calmed down after her initial shock, but she didn't let her guard down. She just stared at the wyverns outside the window with a complicated gaze, as the carriage slowly descended from the sky. Dave guided Lionheart towards the Ainsworth residence and landed 50 meters away from the main entrance. James, Mordred, Anna, Eve, and Helen were already standing in front of the entrance and waited for their guests to disembark from the carriage. I came to visit, William said with a smile. It's good to see you again, Grandpa, Uncle, Auntie, Eve, and Aunt Helen. Will. Eve immediately reached out to her big brother. William chuckled as he hurriedly picked up his adorable cousin and kissed her cheeks. James smiled as he looked at the guests that William had brought along with him. He was already familiar with the others, but there were several new faces that he hadn't seen before, namely Amelia and Princess Ayla, who were both beautiful ladies. The old man laughed as he patted William's shoulder. You did well, boy. Should I start preparing for a grand wedding ceremony? Before William could even give a retort to his shameless grandpa's words, Brianna hurriedly ran towards James and grabbed his hand. Grandpa James, we meet again, Brianna said with a big smile on her face. Do you remember your promise? You said that you would give me a wyvern the next time we saw each other. Brianna. James almost didn't recognize the adorable girl that suddenly clung to him. What are you doing here? Did your old man allow you to leave the mountain? Wait. Don't tell me, you ran away from home and hitched a ride. A mischievous smile appeared on Brianna's face as she gave William a sidelong glance before returning her attention to James. Grandpa, Big Brother William said that he fell in love with me at first sight, Brianna stated with a face filled with injustice. He challenged a prince in order to win my hand in marriage. Right now, I am his fiancé. James almost choked on his saliva when he heard Brianna's words. He then stared at William as if he was looking at a scum. Boy, even though I always tell you to look for girls to marry, I didn't tell you to prey on little girls, James said in a righteous manner as if he was free from sin. However, since you can't uncook cooked rice, I will turn a blind eye on this matter. Just make sure that you treat Brianna well in the future. William snorted and raised his hand to flick the loli's forehead. Unfortunately for him, Brianna had already anticipated his reaction and backed away while giggling. She then stuck out her tongue at William, which made the half-elf scratch his head in helplessness. Eve found William's reaction funny. She then reached out her two small hands to grab his hair and pulled on it. William ignored Eve's actions as he confronted his grandpa. It is true that I won Brianna's hand in a duel, but I intend to pair her with Prince Ernest, William hurriedly explained because his Aunt Anna and Aunt Helen were looking at him with displeasure. He didn't want the two ladies, who had helped to raise him, to have any misunderstandings. He then glared at Brianna, who was hiding behind Wendy's back. I see. James played with his beard as he accepted William's explanation. Then how about the other two ladies whom I haven't seen before? What is your relationship with them? William felt relieved because his grandpa readily accepted his explanation. He then started to introduce the two new faces that accompanied him back to Lant. The beautiful lady with green hair is Lady Amelia Louise, William said. She is a permanent member of my own night squad. Louise? Is she perhaps the daughter of Philip, the Baron of Bradford? James inquired. Amelia, who was standing not far away from William, made a curtsy. It is an honor for Lord Ainsworth to know of our humble origins. James grinned as he waved his hand in a casual manner. Your father and I are not close, and we've only met twice in the past when I was passing through your barony. Even so, Philip is well known in the noble circle for not sticking his head in places that he shouldn't stick his head in. Your father is quite an admirable person. Amelia blushed at James' praise towards her father. She didn't expect that the hidden overlord of the West had met her father in the past. After that brief exchange, William then introduced the VIP guest that had accompanied him from the Kirintur Mountains. This beautiful lady here is the second princess of the Zelan dynasty, Ayla Sol Zelan, William announced. Her reason for coming here is due to the request of the Crown Prince, Alaric Sol Zelan. He also asked me to give this letter to you, Gramps. William took out the handwritten letter from his storage ring and presented it to his grandfather. James opened the letter and started to read. At first, there was a frown on his face, but his expression calmed down after he finished reading the letter. Ayla, was it? James asked in a friendly manner. From this day onwards, you will be a guest of our humble town of Lant. Although the amenities we have can't compare to the things inside the Zelan Royal Palace, they aren't too shabby either. Thank you, Lord James. Princess Ayla made a respectful curtsy towards the legendary figure that once visited their domain many years ago. I will be in your care from now on. James nodded his head. According to Alaric's letter, you are studying life magic, right? Yes, Lord Ainsworth. Do you have a master teaching you? No 7 C it and felb/n. C/m for L test vels. James once again nodded his head. It's quite fortunate that we have a very capable life archon here in Lant. If you wish, I can introduce you to him and ask him to take you on as his disciple. Princess Ayla's eyes widened in shock. She didn't expect that this small town had a life archon in it. There was only one life archon in the southern continent, and that person had been shrouded in mystery. The only thing that the life mages of the southern continent knew about this legendary figure was that he liked beautiful young women and his stamina seemed endless. Lord Ainsworth, are you referring to the archon of the Spring of Life? Princess Ayla couldn't stop herself from trembling in excitement. Is he here? Is the renowned life archon, Sir Owen, here in Lant? Yes. James chuckled. Knowing that old man's taste, he would be more than happy to make you his disciple. William, who was listening to the side, had a dumbfounded expression on his face. He didn't expect that the old coot that boasted about his ability to go several rounds in bed was someone so famous. He even wondered if Princess Ayla was referring to someone else, and not the shameless and perverted old man, who had secretly told William several tips on how to make a woman feel good in bed. Chapter 262, Just wait, my beloved little pets. Just because you are a princess doesn't mean that I will treat you favorably. I am a very strict teacher. Are you sure you want to become my apprentice? Yes? Please, make me your disciple, Lord Owen. Very well, Owen nodded in a righteous manner. The charisma that was oozing from his body was that of a master that had faced great battles and had lived to tell the tale. William couldn't stop his lips from twitching as he stood at the side, watching this master and disciple pair. He wanted to grab the old man and shake his body so badly while shouting, "Where is the real Owen? You imposter? Tell me, where did you hide that old pervert who only knows how to boast about how he mastered the 444 positions that would make a woman go crazy?" When he saw Princess Ayla kneel and pay her respects to her new master, William almost spat on the ground. The old pervert winked at him and gave him the "now you know how awesome I am" expression while Ayla wasn't looking at him. William's reply was simple. He gave Owen the middle finger. This brief exchange between the two came to an abrupt end when Princess Ayla raised her head to look at her new master. Owen extended his hand to hold her hand, which was the procedure of accepting a disciple among the life mages. Princess Ayla stood up with Owen's assistance, completing the ceremony of apprenticeship. "Rest for now," Owen said in a tone that was befitting of a monk that had abstained from worldly desires. "Our training will start tomorrow. I'll pick you up when the sun rises." "Yes, master." Princess Ayla bowed respectfully before walking back towards the Ainsworth residence. William and Owen watched her retreating back in silence. The moment the girl disappeared from their sight, Owen's exalted form and aura disappeared completely. "Will, I'm going to tell this to you now. You'd better not extend your filthy hands onto my disciple," Owen said in disdain. "Excuse me? I'm not an old cow that preys on young grass. Just look at how handsome I am. Do I even need to put an effort into making the ladies fall in love with me?" William snorted. "Old man, you'd better behave and not do anything untowards to your new disciple, or else I'll tell your wife." Owen summoned his staff and immediately whacked William's head. Even though he had already mastered a lot of skills and had grown stronger over the years, Owen's strike cleanly landed on William's head, which made the boy cry out in pain. "Fool! Do not say such stupid things," Owen reprimanded. "Life mages don't do those things, especially between master and disciple. You'd better not spout any of that nonsense, especially in front of Ayla. You've finally shown your true colors, old man." William grumbled. "What great archon? What legend? Pitui? You're just a lecherous old man who likes to eat young grass." Owen was about to whack the boy again when the door of his house opened, revealing his young and beautiful wife, Sarah. "Darling, lunch is ready," Sarah said with a smile. "Little Will, it has been a while. Do you want to have lunch with us?" William and Owen smiled as both of them patted each other like they were the best of friends. Sarah smiled sweetly at the two and was very happy that the boys were getting along. "Thank you for the invitation, big sister Sarah," William replied. "However, I have guests back at the residence and I need to entertain them. Perhaps next time." "All right." Sarah nodded. "Make sure to visit us again, Will, and study properly at the Royal Academy." "I will, big sister." "Darling, let's go and eat while the food is still warm." "I'm coming, honey," Owen said. "See you later, William." "Bye-bye, Sir Owen." After the couple closed the door behind them, William shook his head helplessly as he walked back towards the residence. That old coot must have saved a planet in his past life to have Sarah as his wife, William thought. Then again, Princess Ayla becoming Owen's disciple is also a good thing. Grandpa and Owen are not fools. They will be able to monitor Princess Ayla and see if she has any hidden agendas in the Hellan Kingdom. The group stayed the night in Lant before going back to the capital the next day. Although William could stay longer, he had many important matters to attend to. After 2 days of travel, they finally arrived at the capital and immediately headed towards the Royal Academy. 2 hours after arriving at the academy, William was summoned to the palace. He took Brianna with him, because he intended to discuss with the king about making Brianna the fiancée of Prince Ernest. Although there was no certainty that Great Chief Evander and his sons would be able to retain their position as the leader of the tribes, William thought that it would be best to officially declare Brianna as Prince Ernest's fiancée since the two kids seemed to have feelings for each other. 7c at nfelb/n.c/m for L test bells. 13 days. That was the amount of time that had passed since William had left the Royal Academy, and many things had happened while they were away. The Academy was busy preparing for the interdivision battle, and all the divisions were training seriously for the chance to become this year's champion. Of course, aside from the students, Carter had also been very busy. With the help of Charlotte, and the children that had been affected by the suggestion spell, the candies had made their way to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd years of the magic division. He didn't dare try to ensnare the 4th years because there were strong individuals like Matthew and Leah who had very strong perceptions. Carter didn't want to jeopardize his plan, so he focused on these 3 divisions. Right now, he had successfully corrupted 70% of the student body, and the rest would be fully under his control a few days before the interdivision battle started. "So, Wendy and the Knight Commander have returned to the academy." Carter's face brightened when he heard Charlotte's report. He had been waiting a long time for Wendy's return and had prepared a special variety of candy just for her. This candy was more potent than the rest, and it would only take 3 to 4 days for the spell to mature inside his target's body. "Yes," Charlotte replied happily. "Right now, Wendy is resting inside her room. Do you want me to give her the candy you specially made for her?" "Yes, please." Carter handed the pouch to Charlotte with a smile. "I'm counting on you, my love." Carter drew Charlotte close and hugged her. "This weekend, invite her to have lunch with you and bring her here, to my room. That will be when we will discuss our marriage and invite her to become my second wife." "Sounds like a good plan," Charlotte nodded. She really wanted to have Wendy as Carter's second wife because she only wanted those who were close to her to share the love of her beloved man. Carter was planning to have a special time with her and Wendy on the day of the interdivision battles. All he needed to do was wait 2 more weeks before he could leave the southern continent. He would conduct a massacre, then take the talented girls of the Hellan Royal Academy back to the demon continent. After that, he would receive the rewards that the demon lord promised him. Carter could feel the heat in his loins, but he endured it for now. He returned to his laboratory to make more candies. This was a crucial time, and he couldn't afford to keep thinking about the young beauties that would soon be brought back to the demon continent. Just wait, my beloved little pets, Carter mused. Soon, I will take all of you to the peak of pleasure and make you forget your lives in the southern continent. Chapter 263, William's Gamble. William was currently walking hand in hand with Brianna inside the palace. The little loli was looking everywhere with an undisguised curiosity that would make anyone label her as a country bumpkin, but she didn't care because no one was around. The half-elf discovered that Brianna had an uncanny ability to change her expressions in less than a second the moment she sensed someone aside from those close to her. One moment she looked like an ignorant bumpkin, the next she looked like a dignified princess. William was quite impressed by the loli's ability that he gave her 2 thumbs up in his heart. As they were about to reach the main hall where the king was waiting, they saw a young boy blocking their path. He tried to act calm on the surface, but his body language was saying otherwise. It was as if he wanted to run towards them, but his years of being trained as a member of the royal family prevented him from doing something unbecoming of a prince. Brianna clung to William's arm as the two neared the youngest prince of the Hellan kingdom, Prince Ernest. She had a smile on her face while looking at Prince Ernest. William, on the other hand, just played along with the adorable loli because he, too, was interested in how the young prince would react. Sir William, I am here to congratulate you for a job well done in preventing the northern tribes from turning hostile on us, Prince Ernest said as soon as William stopped a few meters in front of him. My father is waiting at the Great Hall. Please, see him as soon as possible. I will look after Lady Brianna, while you make your report to my father. Brianna looked up at William with longing. Darling, don't take too long. I'm scared. Don't worry, honey, William replied as he patted Brianna's head. I won't be gone for long. It was then when Prince Ernest stepped forward and pried Brianna's hands off William's arm. He then pulled her away from the half-elf. The young prince hid the loli behind his back before glaring at William. Sir William, I know that the two of you are just acting, but let me say this here and now, Prince Ernest stated. Big sister Brianna is going to be my fiancée. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't make any further moves towards her. William looked at the little shrimp with amusement. Prince Ernest had a serious expression on his face, while the mischievous loli behind him was covering her lips as her body trembled. Clearly, she was doing her best not to laugh out loud. Your Highness, I won Brianna's hand in a fair duel, William said in a righteous manner. Her father has also given me his consent. What I do with her is none of your business. Sir William, your attempt to make me jealous is working. I would greatly appreciate it if we stopped this farce, right here, right now. Che, you're no fun. William crossed his arms over his chest with a smile. Although he wanted to tease the young prince a little more, he knew that now was not the time to do it. Big sister, please stop teasing me as well. Prince Ernest looked at the adorable girl behind him and pouted. Do you really enjoy seeing me suffer? Is it fun to bully me? Ah, little Ernie, you've grown taller since the last time I saw you. Brianna gave Prince Ernest a hug before patting his head. Just a few more years and you'll be taller than me. When that happens, I'm afraid that the one to be bullied would be me. I will never bully you, big sister. You'd better not, or I'll run to Darling's side. Prince Ernest nodded his head seriously, which made William grin. Looks like Prince Ernest will be a henpecked prince in the future, William mused. Okay, I'll meet with the king first. Prince Ernest, please, entertain our northern princess. Prince Ernest smiled and pulled on Brianna's hand. Big sister, let's go to the garden. The flowers are in full bloom and you will definitely love them. Brianna waved her hand at William before allowing herself to be pulled away by a jealous Prince Ernest. The red-headed boy waved back at her before walking towards the great hall where the king was waiting for him. Your favorite ovals at n/vl/bin.com. And that is how our northern expedition ended, Your Majesty. William finished his report and bowed towards King Noah. Noah nodded his head. I received Sir Jerkin's report yesterday, but I still wanted to hear your own version of the story. You did well and the merits you earned for our kingdom deserves a reward. The king of the Hellan kingdom secretly praised himself for sending the half-elf with his foreign ambassador to the northern regions. If it was only Sir Jerkins that had gone, then the northern tribes would have successfully allied with the two dynasties and pincered the Hellan kingdom from 3 sides. Because of this, he decided to give William a reward. As for what that reward was, he couldn't think of anything that the boy might like. This was why he decided to wait for William's visit to the palace and personally ask him the reward he wanted the most. William pondered for a bit. But right now, nothing came to mind, so he decided to put his reward on hold. Your Majesty, I can't think of anything right now, William said. For the time being, can you put my reward on hold? Understood. Noah smiled. When you finally know what you really want, come and find me. No matter how many years it takes, this promise of mine will still hold true. Thank you, Your Majesty. William bowed. After that brief exchange, William decided to discuss Brianna's matter with King Noah. He said that although Great Chief Evander and his family might not be able to retain their position after 4 years, the possibility still existed. Because of that, William insisted that Brianna be properly betrothed to Prince Ernest as his official fiancé. Surprisingly, King Noah didn't agree or disagree with William's suggestions. The only thing he promised was that he would see to it that the northern princess would be properly cared for in the palace. William sighed in his heart, but he knew that he couldn't be too pushy. He was about to ask for his leave when the king made a gesture for him to come closer. Sir William, there is something that I would like to entrust to you for the time being, King Noah said with a serious expression. The king then took out a sheathed dagger from his storage ring and handed it over to William. Hold on to this dagger for safekeeping, King Noah ordered. In any situation, you are not allowed to divulge to anyone, not even your family, that I gave you this dagger. Also, you will not hand this dagger over to anyone, regardless of who they are or whatever position they have. Do I make myself clear? As you command, Your Majesty, William replied as he took the sheathed dagger from the king's hand. After taking hold of the dagger, he immediately used his appraisal skill to get more information about the dagger that was entrusted to him. How come I can't read anything? William thought. I'll ask the system later. It would be disrespectful to investigate further in front of the king. William stored the dagger in his storage ring and took a step back. King Noah looked at him seriously before waving his hand. You may go. King Noah smiled. Please, do your best, and continue to protect our kingdom to the best of your abilities, Sir William. The Hellan Kingdom is my homeland, William replied. I will do my best to meet your expectations, Your Majesty. After concluding his visit, William left the Great Hall and went to find Brianna in the garden. He explained that the little lowly would be staying at the palace and be treated like a VIP guest. William also warned Prince Ernest that he should take care of Brianna or else he would take her away. Prince Ernest made a solemn promise that made William and Brianna pat his shoulders in admiration. After bidding goodbye to the young prince and the adorable lowly, William headed towards the stables where the flying carriage was waiting for him. He was only 100 meters away from the stables when the system suddenly gave him an emergency report. Host? The spell that was dormant in Wendy's soul of consciousness has suddenly been strengthened. Right now, 60% of her sea of consciousness has been taken over. I estimate that before the day is over, it will reach up to 65% completion. What? William almost jumped off his feet at the sudden turn of events. He had only left the Royal Academy for 2 hours and, in that short amount of time, the corruption of Wendy's sea of consciousness had already advanced to such a degree. William couldn't believe it, and he found this a very hard thing to stomach. Tell me all the details, William ordered. Make sure to not leave anything out. Understood. When the host left for the royal palace, Wendy returned to her dormitory to rest. An hour later, she left her dormitory room and met Lady Charlotte in the hallways. Wendy's big sister then gave her a pouch filled with candies. Upon contact, I successfully placed a tracker on her and started monitoring her as well. Lady Charlotte returned to her own dormitory room to handle the affairs of the third-year magic division. Wendy, on the other hand, went to the host's dormitory room in the Solaris building. She went to find me. William thought. Continue the explanation. Seeing that the host is not inside the room, Wendy didn't go out. Instead, she laid on top of the host bed and began eating the candy. William clenched his fist so hard that his nails dug into his palm. How is she now? She is currently sleeping on the host's bed. William ran towards the stable in order to return to the Royal Academy as soon as possible. He wanted to be beside Wendy right now, and personally check her current condition. The half-elf knew that he was making a gamble with Wendy's life on the line and hated himself for it. If possible, he really wanted to kill the mastermind behind this whole incident and prevent the girl, who loved him so much, from suffering any harm. Chapter 264, promises that he would no longer be able to keep. Half an hour earlier. It's so boring here in the academy, Wendy thought as she finished changing her clothes after taking a shower. I guess I'll just visit Will for now. I hope he's back from his meeting with the king. She had just left her room when she saw her big sister Charlotte walking in her direction with a big smile on her face. It's good to see that you're finally back. I missed you, Charlotte said as she gave Wendy a light hug. Where have you been? I missed you too, big sister. Wendy returned the hug as she replied to Charlotte's question. We went to the north to train. That's right, Sir William wanted to perfect our team formation so we had to leave the academy to train. Is that so? I hope that the Knight Commander isn't pushing you too hard. Charlotte frowned. Make sure to tell me if he bullies you. I don't care if he's the Knight Commander or not, I'll shove a fireball right up his A**s. Wendy giggled when she imagined William holding onto his bum while running away in fear. Seeing that Wendy seemed to be fine, Charlotte remembered her reason for looking for her. Here you go, some candies for you. Charlotte handed the pouch filled with candies with the "Be thankful I care for you" expression on her face. Thank you, big sister. Wendy happily took the pouch from Charlotte's hand. You're the best. You only say those words when I give you gifts. Well then, I have to go. There are still documents that I need to work on for the third years. I only came here to check up on you and see that you're in one piece. Thank you once again, big sister. I'll treat you to something good tomorrow. You'd better remember those words. Charlotte patted Wendy's head before going back to the third-year dormitory. Wendy was about to eat a candy when she suddenly remembered what had happened in William's room when she gave him a candy. Her face reddened as she reminisced about the passionate kisses that she had shared with him. I'd better give him some candies as well, Wendy thought. She was looking forward to another kissing session with William that would only become possible because of the candies that were in her possession. Wendy had been a regular visitor of the Solaris dormitory that the guards only nodded at her and allowed her to pass without question. They knew that the beautiful lady was a member of the Knight Commander's personal night squad and gave her the respect she deserved. William's room had a special enchantment in it that prevented anyone from entering without permission. Fortunately for Wendy, she was one of the few exceptions that could enter the room without using a key. He's still not here, Wendy thought as she scanned the room. It's fine. I'll just wait for him to arrive. The blonde beauty immediately headed towards William's bed and sat on top of it. She then opened the pouch of candies and started eating. I'll only eat half and share the rest with William, Wendy thought as she put a red-colored candy inside her mouth. This way, it's a win-win for both of us. After eating 8 candies, Wendy suddenly felt drowsy and slept on top of William's bed, while hugging William's pillow. Somewhere in Asgard. Captain, please wake up. We are being dispatched to the battlefield to collect the souls of warriors. We are the team that is currently on standby, so we have to hurry before our superiors deduct our wages. Just let me sleep for 5 more minutes. What are you talking about, Captain? A beautiful lady with dark brown hair raised her voice as she shook the sleeping beauty violently. If we don't go soon, Commander Gunner will deduct our wages. I plan to have a date with my boyfriend this month. I need to buy a new dress. You're so annoying. The sleeping beauty finally relented and propped herself up from the bed. Her long, silky, blonde hair shimmered briefly as the rays of the sun fell upon them. I'll be ready in 5 minutes. Wait for me outside. Understood. Please, hurry, Captain. Okay, stop nagging and just wait for me to finish changing my clothes. Sheesh. The blonde beauty, who seemed to be in her early 20s, walked up to her closet and began to put on her lightweight armor that was designed for the battlefield. After strapping on her protective gear, she walked towards the mirror in order to fix her hair. The image of a beautiful lady with long blonde hair and a pair of blue eyes, that were as clear as the skies of Asgard, were reflected in the mirror. She then began to comb her hair until she was satisfied with it. The blonde beauty then picked up the winged circlet lying on top of her table, and looked at the mirror one last time before going out of her room. As the captain of her squad, it was her duty to lead the other Valkyries on the battlefield to collect the souls of the brave warriors that had fallen in battle. An hour later, 12 Valkyries with their captain in the center descended towards Midgard where a battle had just ended. They had done this duty countless times before and they were already used to guiding the souls of the brave warriors to Valhalla. However, this time, the scene they encountered was different. There are no souls, one of the Valkyries, that were hovering above the dead bodies, stuttered. Captain Wendy? There are no souls on this battlefield, one of the Valkyries reported. It was as if they have vanished into thin air. This has never happened before. Calm down. Wendy raised her hand as her eyes scanned the bloody battlefield that was bereft of any signs of life. Go in teams of 2 and investigate. Maybe there are still lingering souls somewhere on this battlefield. We need to know what happened. Yes. Usually, hundreds, even thousands of souls, could be harvested on the battlefield where the fighting had just ended. Not all souls could go to Valhalla. Only those that fought bravely and for a righteous cause were invited to the great feast that the gods had prepared that watched over the 9 realms of Yggdrasil. Your favorite ovals at n/vl/bin.com. The Valkyries investigated the battlefield in pairs, and just like Wendy mentioned, they did indeed find souls, but their number didn't even surpass 10. While the rest of the Valkyries were doing one last sweep of the battlefield, Wendy flew towards its center and saw a young man with arrows sticking out of his body and a bloody hole in his chest. Clearly, the young man was already dead, but Wendy couldn't help but admire the warrior because he was the only one in the battlefield that had remained standing even after he died. The young man had long silver hair that fell behind his shoulders. His face was stained with blood, but that didn't prevent his good looks from showing through. Wendy caressed the warrior's face, and felt a very subtle fluctuation in his body. Wendy immediately used her powers and coaxed the warrior's soul, that had refused to separate from its mortal vessel, out. I, Wendy, the Valkyrie captain of Lady Brunn, have come to take you, O brave warrior, to come with me and enter Valhalla, Wendy said in a respectful tone. This was an etiquette that the Valkyries had learned during their training when addressing the brave warriors that had died on the battlefield. Soon, the soul of a young warrior appeared before Wendy. According to her estimate, the young man was still in his late teens and hadn't even grown a beard, which was very uncommon among the warriors that had ascended to Valhalla. What is your name, brave warrior? Wendy asked. William, the young man answered. William Pendragon. Wendy extended her hand in a gesture of invitation. Come, brave William, Wendy said softly. The halls of Asgard are waiting for you. Your duty in the mortal world is over. Your duty to protect the 9 realms is about to begin. William looked at Wendy's delicate hand before reluctantly raising his own. The Valkyrie captain could see the unwillingness in his eyes. Those were the eyes of someone that still had unfinished business in the mortal realm. Wendy had seen these kinds of eyes many times in the past. However, she knew that the young warrior would gradually forget about his ties with the mortal world the moment he stepped into the halls of Asgard. The beautiful Valkyrie firmly gripped the young man's hand and flapped her wings to ascend to the sky. Soon, the other Valkyries joined her in flight as they took the surviving souls to their final destination. William glanced at Midgard one last time before he closed his eyes to weep. He still had promises to keep. promises that he would no longer be able to keep. Chapter 265, a farce with a tragic ending. Ha. Hey, ha, Wendy mumbled in her sleep as she unconsciously tried to reach out for something. William, who sat beside the bedside, caught her hand and held it firmly. Perhaps feeling the familiar touch, a smile appeared on Wendy's face as she continued to sleep. You're such a handful, William said softly as he brushed away the strands of hair that blocked the sleeping girl's face. The spell inside her had finally stabilized. Right now, 65% of her sea of consciousness has been invaded. Understood. William sighed as the internal struggle in him waged on. After putting a tracker on Charlotte, the system had been monitoring her every move. However, she still hadn't met anyone that the system had deemed suspicious. Because of this, William still couldn't do anything aside from making sure that the girl that was holding his hand wouldn't suffer any harm. He had already steeled himself for this scenario, but when it actually happened, he still felt bitter in his heart. Minutes passed. Hours passed. After 3 hours, Wendy sleepily opened her eyes. She had a good dream, and it made her feel refreshed after waking up. The first thing she saw was a sleeping half-elf's face in front of her. It took a moment for the gears in Wendy's head to start churning. Half a minute later, her eyes widened when she found herself lying in the young man's embrace. Ironically, her hands were wrapped around William as if she was holding a hug pillow. The boy, on the other hand, had his arms wrapped around her in a protective embrace. Wendy didn't know what to do at the moment. A part of her wanted to stay in William's embrace and let this moment last a little while longer, while the other part of her wanted to plant a kiss on his lips. She was afraid that if she took the initiative to kiss William, the latter would wake up and the feeling of warmth and security she was experiencing would disappear. Fortunately, before she could finalize her decision, the boy's eyes opened. Blue eyes met green and the two stared at each other for a long time before William pulled her closer to him and planted a kiss on her forehead. Did you have a good rest? William asked. Although he tried to hide it, there was a tinge of worry in his voice. Yes, Wendy replied as she breathed in his scent. I always sleep well when you are around. Then sleep here with me tonight. The two embraced each other for a while before reluctantly separating. Will. Yes. I had a good dream, but I can't recall anything about it when I woke up, Wendy said while fixing her messy hair in front of the mirror. Even so, I have a feeling that you were in that dream as well. William crossed his arms over his chest and gave Wendy a smile. I don't know what your dream was about, but if I was in there then that means that it was an awesome dream. Although I can't recall much of my dream, I have a feeling that your expression in that dream of mine was a very sad one. It was as if you lost or had forgotten something very important. The smile on William's face stiffened when he heard Wendy's reply. Read lat.st chapters at no.bin/c/o/m only. It's just a dream, William said as he walked towards the girl who was currently fixing her hair in the mirror. William then gave her a light hug as he tried to bury the anxiousness he was feeling in his heart. Just a dream, so you don't have to think too much about it. Wendy replied as she placed her hand over William's. In the far east where the kingdom of Frisia was located. Sydney, the Hellan kingdom seems to be having some difficulties right now, the king of Frisia said with a serious expression. Because of this, I've decided to send you there as my envoy. Understood, the third princess of the kingdom of Frisia, Sydney, replied. Will I be going alone? No, you will be accompanied by 4 teams of aerial cavaliers. Also, I will give you full command over them. Do what you see fit in order to help our allies. We mustn't let the Hellan kingdom fall. The moment they fall, it will be our turn next. Don't worry, father, Sydney replied. I will support our allies to the best of my abilities. When will I be leaving? You will be leaving by midnight. Prepare the things that you need to bring. Don't forget to take your maidservants along with you. Understood. Be careful while I am away, father. The king of Frisia smiled, but he was standing at least 10 meters away from his daughter. Any closer would make it impossible for him to resist the effect of her powers. Princess Sydney, like always, was wearing a veil. Not only to hide her beauty, but to protect anyone from being ensnared by her powerful charm. No one is safe from it. Men, women, and even some beasts under the centennial rank, wouldn't be able to resist her. Although the king felt reluctant to let her leave the kingdom, his advisors had strongly suggested that they send her to the Hellan kingdom as his representative. This was a way to show their support, and help them understand that Frisia hadn't abandoned them. After Princess Sydney left the room, the king's expression became serious as he called upon his trusted subordinates to update him of the current movements of the 2 dynasties. This upcoming war made him feel anxious because the decisions of the 2 dynasties were too sudden. Although there was an unwritten rule between the 4 major powers in the southern continent that they wouldn't attack each other, no treaties had been signed to enforce it. This unwritten rule had lasted for a few hundred years, and Wbnovel Frisia, the current king of Frisia, thought that it would last for 100 more before the southern continent was once again embroiled in strife. His advisors had already mentioned that there was something fishy about this war, but their spies hadn't discovered any credible information about why the 2 dynasties suddenly made an alliance and teamed up to attack the Hellan kingdom. Naturally, King Redmond was aware of the series of unfortunate events that had happened to their staunch ally in the west. Even he thought that the back-to-back events seemed to have been planned by someone hidden in the shadows. The only thing we can do is prepare for war, King Redmond said softly as he stared towards the west. Since this war is already inevitable, I need to make sure that Frisia would not suffer too many casualties. King Redmond wanted to help the Hellan Kingdom survive the storm that was slowly creeping on its borders, but they were just too far to offer any real assistance. All he could do was send his daughter, Princess Sidney, with their prided aerial cavaliers to at least tell King Noah that they were in this war together. I just hope that we are not being used as a chess piece by some higher power, King Redmond thought with a frown. Because if that is the case, then this whole farce will have a very tragic ending. Not only for the Hellan Kingdom, but for everyone that lives in the southern continent. Princess Sidney walked towards her quarters with even steps. The maidservants following behind her had been unable to resist her charms and were now her loyal subordinates. If she wished for them to die, they would gladly stab their hearts in front of her with smiles on their faces. If Sidney wished it, she could easily bring down an entire nation on a whim. However, she didn't have any interest in dominion over the southern continent. What she wanted in life was very simple. To find someone that would make her understand the true meaning of love, which was something that was far beyond her reach. Chapter 266, Lost Memories. I knew that you would be here, Wendy said as she descended from the sky. The silver-haired young man didn't turn his head and continued to stare at the bridge that connected Asgard to the other realms of Yggdrasil. Listen, I know what you're thinking, but it's not going to happen. Wendy stood beside the warrior whom she had personally brought back from the battlefield a week ago. You can't return to Midgard. Just give up. William didn't say anything because he knew that she was right. He was already dead and it was impossible for him to return to Midgard. The young man knew this, but he was still unwilling to give up. Is there something you need to do? Wendy asked. Pass a message perhaps? If you ask nicely, I'll find a way to deliver your handwritten letter the next time I go to Midgard to gather the souls of warriors. This time, the young man finally had a reaction. He stared at Wendy intensely as he grabbed her arm. Can you really send a letter back? William asked. Will you do it? That will depend on my mood, Wendy replied with a smile. Also, it depends on the contents of the letter. Take note that coded messages are not allowed. If you play something fishy, I will personally hand you to Lady Freya to have your memories erased completely. The young man flinched when he heard Wendy's warning. He was planning to send a coded message to someone very important to him, but if the price was to have his memories erased, then it would all be for naught. Wendy gave him the "I knew you'd do that" expression and pried away the hands that were holding onto her arm. The man snorted and walked away. Since his plan to send a message could no longer be achieved, he had to find another way to contact that person in Midgard. 3 months later, William thrust his spear and pierced the eye of an orc champion that was wreaking havoc on the battlefield. The monster screamed in pain and waved its giant axe at random in order to protect itself from further attacks. Finding a gap in the orc champion's attack, William charged in and slid between its legs. He then used his full strength to cut off its head from behind, ending its life and making its subordinates scatter in fear. The green fountain of blood rained upon the beheaded champion's surroundings, which made the warriors that accompanied William regain their morale and attack the orc champion's subordinates with renewed frenzy. Good job, Wendy landed beside William. With this, we have successfully defended this elven outpost. I'm sure that the lords of Alfheim will reward us generously. What's wrong? Wendy noticed that William was looking absent-mindedly at a dead elven warrior not far from him. Since this was an outpost that belonged to the elves, it was only natural that the ones protecting it were the elven warriors of Alfheim. Don't tell me that the standoffish William has suddenly awakened to necrophilia, Wendy asked in a teasing tone. She had already noticed that the elven warrior that had died was a woman and wondered why William was looking at her with such an intense gaze. Do I know any elves? William asked absent-mindedly. I can't remember anything, but for some reason looking at her is making me feel anxious. It's as if... The silver-haired warrior paused mid-sentence before holding his head as if he was suffering from a headache. The cleansing has already reached this stage, Wendy thought with a sad expression. He stopped going to the Bifrost Bridge 2 weeks ago and just stays within Valhalla to train every day. The so-called cleansing was the gradual loss of memory after a warrior had entered Asgard. Most warriors completely lose their memories within a month of their arrival, as they helped the gods of Asgard safeguard the denizens of the other realms from invaders that were allied with Jotunheim and Muspelheim. Those who had broken free from the shackles of their past lives were baptized by the light of Yggdrasil and were born anew as an Einherjar. A/N, Einherjar means army of one, or those who fight alone. William was a very rare existence because he had held on this long and still kept a few of his memories intact. However, it wouldn't be long before those precious memories of his also vanished into thin air. When that day came, he, too, would be reborn as an Einherjar. Wendy had watched over the cold, yet brave warrior, who would always fight on the front lines in order to protect his comrades. She watched him save the weak and helpless from the monsters that invaded their lands without even thinking of his own safety. Part of her wanted to see William free from the shackles that hounded him, even in the afterlife. The other part of her wanted to preserve the memories of the brave warrior that had wormed himself into her heart. Let's go back, Will, Wendy said softly as he patted the warrior's shoulder. Let's go back to Asgard. William blinked and looked at her absent-mindedly. Soon, he nodded his head and accepted Wendy's invitation. The Valkyrie captain transformed into a Pegasus and allowed William to mount her. This was a special privilege to a select few. Usually, only those that a Valkyrie had chosen to become her life partner would gain this right. Naturally, William wasn't aware of this hidden rule among those that ferried the souls of brave warriors to the halls of Valhalla. He was busy trying to grasp the fleeting memories in his hands, before they too disappeared for eternity. Visit novelbin.cm for updates. Inside William's quarters in the Solaris dormitory, Wendy opened her eyes and found herself inside William's room. She had been sleeping with him since the day they had returned from the north, and rumors were starting to spread in the Marshall division that she was their commander's lover. To her surprise, William didn't deny or affirm the rumors. He simply brushed them aside as if they were something insignificant and not worth his attention. Wendy's twin, Spencer, was very vocal about it and would confront William from time to time. However, after William threatened that he would kick Spencer out of the Marshall division, the Siskin brother had no choice but to back off. William was not only the commander of the Night Order, but also the head prefect of the Marshall division. His words were law, and no matter how aggrieved he was, Spencer wasn't able to do anything in front of William. Instead, he would often tell his sister that the half-elf was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and if she wasn't careful, she would be eaten up in a heartbeat. Little did Spencer know that Wendy was looking forward to being eaten by William. It was quite unfortunate that, aside from simple hugs and kisses, William wouldn't do anything that was beyond his bottom line. "Good morning," William said when he noticed that Wendy was already awake. "I brought you some breakfast." William went early to the kitchen to smuggle breakfast for both of them. He had done this for the past few days, and Wendy loved these simple gestures that made her feel as if they were newlyweds. After eating breakfast, Wendy returned to the Magic Division because today was Saturday. It was also the day that she promised Charlotte that she would accompany her to train. "Big sister, this is not the way to the training grounds," Wendy said after she noticed that they had left the premises of the Magic Division. "There is a place that we need to visit first before we start our training," Charlotte replied with a smile. "I need to meet the maker of those candies that you love so much. He said that he has finished making another batch and asked me to pick them up." "Really?" Wendy was pleasantly surprised by Charlotte's words. "I've long wanted to meet the one who makes those delicious candies." "Don't worry, now is a good opportunity to meet him," Charlotte patted Wendy's head. "I'm sure that you will love him, too, Wendy. This way, the two of us can become his brides and live happily ever after." Charlotte guided Wendy towards the residences that were reserved for the teachers of the Royal Academy, the place where a certain candy maker was looking forward to her arrival. Chapter 267, I'm sorry. Are the rumors about you and Wendy true? Est asked as soon as William sat down inside the meeting room for the first-year representatives of the Martial, Magic, and Spirit divisions. Priscilla, who accompanied William to this gathering, perked her ears up in order to listen to their conversation. The rumor about the half-elf commander and the beautiful lady that was part of his personal night squad had been circulating throughout the Martial division. No one was brave enough to ask their commander whether it was true or not, for they didn't know how he would react to the question. Spencer had been a very good example of how William dealt with those who were trying to raise a ruckus. Wendy's twin was currently undergoing a mission to gather rare herbs that could be used to craft healing potions. This was the decree that William had given after Spencer confronted him about his relationship with his twin sister. After that incident, no one dared to talk about the rumors in William's presence. William propped his chin up using his hand and gave Est a smile. "I didn't know that you like gossip. So, is it true or not?" Est raised an eyebrow. He really wanted to know how far the two had gone in their relationship. "No comment," William replied with a smug expression. Although he didn't mind admitting that he had already recognized Wendy as his lover, he still had to consider his grandfather's and Lawrence's faces. After all, Rebecca was still technically his fiancée, and he still had to deal with that issue before officially declaring his relationship with Wendy. Est scoffed while Ian looked at William in disdain. During the course of their journey in the Kirinter Mountains, William had shown through his actions how much he cared about Wendy. They were always holding each other's hands and they even slept together. It was more than enough evidence to tell that the two were already in a romantic relationship. Even so, Ian was unwilling to recognize it. He would rather turn a blind eye on the two's public display of affection than to hear William officially announce that he and Wendy were now a couple. The head prefect of the Spirit Division, Erwin Boaz, was the last one to arrive in the room, followed by his vice prefect. When all the leaders of the first-year divisions had gathered, the head instructors of the divisions, Grant, Layla, and Lords, started the meeting. "In 2.5 weeks, the interdivision battle is going to begin," Grant said. "We are waiting for a special guest to arrive from the Kingdom of Frisia, so the opening ceremony might be delayed a day or two." Grant then nodded to Lords, so that she could continue the explanation. "We have already informed you of the rules of the competition," Lords stated. "We will conduct a brief review to ensure that all of you are familiar with the rules." Lords then asked the head prefects to recite the main rules of the tournament to ensure that they had memorized them properly. After that, the meeting veered in the direction of how they would conduct the battles and the point system that they would be using for the event. The meeting only lasted an hour and the three instructors were satisfied because all the head prefects were very capable. "All of you do your best," Grant smiled. "It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Just enjoy this event and hone your skills to fullest. All of you are now dismissed." The head and vice prefects bowed their heads respectfully to their instructors before leaving the conference room. "It's finally over," William said after he stretched his arms and waist. "I'm really not used to attending these kinds of meetings." "Priscilla, have you covered everything?" "Yes, Sir William," Priscilla replied. "Good. Please, make sure that everyone is informed about the topics that were discussed in the meeting." "Understood." Priscilla gave William a brief nod before heading towards the Solaris dormitory. Deep inside she must really hate you, Ian commented with his arms crossed over his chest. You just shove your responsibilities onto her then lays around all day long. Do you really see it that way? William asked back. What do you mean? Ian frowned. Aren't you just dumping the workload on her? Of course not. This is what you call trust. Huh? Trust. Yes. Trust, William said with his chin raised in an arrogant manner. I trust Priscilla that she will be able to handle the job more effectively than I would. Since that is the case, why should I get in the way of her role? Ian scoffed at William's shameless way of sugarcoating his laziness. Est and Isaac, who were standing beside the two, sighed in helplessness. Read lat st chapters at no, v, e, l, bin/c/o/m only. Ah, that reminds me, est. William shifted his attention to his good friend. Have you thought about whether we should continue our bet or not? Est frowned. He had thought long and hard about his bet with William, and he was still on the fence whether he should agree or not. However, William's answer to his earlier question about his relationship with Wendy was brushed aside, so he was feeling irritated. Because of this, he decided to accept the half-elf's proposal and agreed to his bet. Let's do it, Est replied. I agree to the terms of our bet. Good. William chuckled as he extended his hand. May the best man win. Est firmly gripped William's hand and shook it. Suddenly, the smile on William's face vanished as a serious expression crossed over his face. What's wrong? You look like you've just swallowed a fly, Est teased the handsome half-elf that was looking at him as if William was seeing him for the first time. Host. Est's sea of consciousness has been fully invaded by the Mind Weaver spell. Put a tracker on him. Include all the add-ons. Understood. William unconsciously tightened his grip on Est's hand as he did his best to control the rage that was building inside his heart. Too far? Whoever this person is has gone too far. William's breathing became heavy as he forced himself to calm down. Est was the very first friend he had made outside of Lant, and he was very special to him. For his good friend to be under the subtle control of someone from the shadows pained his heart. I'm sorry, William said softly. This was the only thing he could do for his friend. He didn't know if the mastermind was alone, or he had many helpers in the background. Until he managed to capture their trails, he couldn't afford to dispel the Mind Weaver spell inside Est's body. Doing so would only alert the mastermind because the spells were directly connected to their consciousness. Sorry? For what? Est asked. Don't tell me you're apologizing to me because you're confident that you'll be the one to win our bet? Will, you might be strong, but don't underestimate me. I will make you taste my true power when the two of us face off in the arena. William was about to say more, but his words stopped in his throat when the system gave him an emergency notification. Host? The spell inside Wendy's body is rising at an alarming rate. The invasion on her sea of consciousness has suddenly risen to 95%. She is now currently in a trance, and is now in the presence of someone who could potentially be the mastermind behind all of this. According to my estimate, it will only take 20 more minutes before her sea of consciousness has been taken over completely. Chapter 268. Would you like to kiss me? Disclaimer, if you are faint-hearted or someone that gets triggered easily, I strongly advise you that you read this chapter along with the chapter entitled Chapter 268, A Vessel That Held Limitless Possibilities. If the chapter I mentioned is not currently available, hold off in reading this chapter and wait until the next day. If you don't want to feel anxious and constipated for the remainder of the day, make sure to follow my advice. I don't want to hear any complaints, and people telling me that I didn't warn them beforehand. Read this chapter at your own risk. Half an hour earlier. Big sister, isn't this the area where the instructors have their own residences? That's right. Wait. You mean to say that the one who makes the candies is an instructor? Wendy asked in disbelief. That's right, Charlotte replied with a smile. And we have arrived at our destination. Wendy gazed at the small gate that led to a 3-story house. This house was located on the outskirts of the teachers' residences and no other houses were around it. Let's go inside, Charlotte said as she firmly held Wendy's hand and led her inside the gate. Big sister, can we really enter without permission? Wendy inquired. Charlotte chuckled and patted Wendy's head. You're such a worrywart. Of course, I have already gotten permission from the instructor. Just relax your little head and follow me. Wendy's big sister opened the front door and invited her in as if she was the owner of the place. Charlotte then guided her to the second floor where Carter's room was located. For some reason, Wendy suddenly felt a sense of anticipation in her heart. She thought that it was just her curiosity about finding out who the candy maker really was making her heart beat a little faster than normal. Charlotte then knocked on the door to announce their presence. Professor, it's me. Come in, a gentle voice replied from the other side of the door. Charlotte opened the door to the room and signaled for Wendy to enter before her. The latter obeyed her big sister's gesture and entered the room obediently. After Wendy had entered the room, Charlotte also stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She made sure to lock the door properly to ensure that no one would be leaving the room without Carter's permission. Wendy's gaze landed on a handsome man who seemed to be in his early 20s, seated on a chair with a book in hand. He seemed to be reading the book before they arrived, and Wendy thought that the image of an esteemed scholar fit him perfectly. Allow me to do the introductions, Charlotte said with a smile. Wendy, this is Professor Carter. He is the magic teacher of the 3rd years that specializes in magic combat. He is also the maker of the candies that you love so much. Professor, this is Wendy Armstrong. Although we are not blood related, I treat her as my own little sister. I hope that the two of you get along well. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Armstrong, Carter greeted as he stood up from his chair and gave Wendy a respectful bow. Wendy curtsied like a proper noble and returned Carter's greeting. The honor is mine, Professor Carter. It's a pleasure meeting the maker of those delicious candies. Are all of them really handmade? They are, Carter answered with pride. Charlotte has been telling me over and over again how beautiful and talented you are. Seeing you face to face, I have no choice but to agree with her words. Charlotte giggled as she walked towards Carter. You mean to say that you didn't believe the words I said, Professor? Charlotte playfully pounded Carter's shoulder and the latter only laughed. Seeing the two of them side by side made Wendy's heart beat faster. The scene reminded her of how she and William would normally interact when it was only the two of them inside his dormitory room. I almost forgot. Carter lightly tapped his head as if he had really forgotten something important. I just made a new product and I am looking for someone to do a taste test. Ms. Armstrong, are you willing to give it a try? Carter took something out from his pocket and unwrapped it. Inside was a red candy that was as dark as blood. Wendy swallowed unconsciously the moment her eyes landed on the candy. It was as if she had been unable to direct her gaze anywhere save on the crimson candy that lay harmlessly in the professor's palm. Carter smiled and lightly swung his hand to the left. Wendy's gaze followed the candy as if her eyes were stuck on it completely. The professor then walked towards the beautiful young lady and extended his hand. Do you want it? Carter inquired. Aye, Wendy stuttered. Carter was using the spell that was inside her body to control her emotions in a subtle manner. Do you want it? Carter repeated. I want, Wendy replied. Carter chuckled and glanced at Charlotte who was standing beside him. Feed this to your little sister, Carter ordered. He wanted Charlotte to personally do the act because it was more interesting that way. Charlotte obeyed and picked up the candy from the professor's palm and slowly approached the young lady who seemed to have lost her ability to think. Open your mouth, Charlotte ordered. Wendy obediently opened her mouth, which made Carter grin internally. Charlotte then softly pressed the candy against Wendy's lips and moved it ever so slowly, like she was applying lipstick on her luscious pink lips. After completing a full cycle, Wendy's big sister finally slid the candy inside Wendy's mouth and watched as the girl in front of her fell into a trance-like state. The candy dissolved the moment it entered Wendy's mouth. The sweet taste washed away all thoughts that she was currently thinking. Devoid of all thoughts, Wendy felt as if she was floating. She was like a painting that was slowly being stripped of her colors. Carter watched with a satisfied smile as he looked at the girl that was slowly succumbing to the power of his spell. Charlotte returned to his side and wrapped her arms around the professor, before kissing his lips. It was as if she wasn't the least bit worried about what was happening to Wendy. All she cared for was the love of the man whose hands were firmly grabbing her waist. It didn't take long before a sigh escaped Wendy's lips. She blinked once then twice as she looked at her big sister kissing the handsome professor in front of her. Her heart started to beat wildly inside her chest and a sudden heat washed over her body, making her face flush in embarrassment. What's wrong? Is this your first time seeing a kiss? Carter asked. And no, Wendy stuttered. Oh. Carter raised an eyebrow. Then, have you kissed someone before? Yes. Who is it? Will, Wendy replied. The Knight Commander of the Angarian War Sovereign. Ah, him. Carter smiled. He didn't mind Wendy having her first kiss stolen from her. What was important to him was the girl's chastity that was still intact. He even sneered at the Knight Commander for being too young and too naive to take advantage of the girl that was clearly infatuated with him. Carter's gaze, that was fixed on Wendy's face, slowly shifted downwards. It stopped on her ample chest for a brief moment, before continuing to move down her body. The professor gazed at that part as if his eyes could see past through Wendy's clothes and smiled. How is the Knight Commander's kiss? Carter asked. Does it feel good? Wendy could feel the warmth spreading into her entire body like an aphrodisiac as Carter empowered the spell that had almost taken over her sea of consciousness. It feels good, Wendy replied as she once again fell into a trance. She couldn't take her eyes off the handsome professor in front of her. Wendy felt confused, but her thoughts were muddled right now. She couldn't think straight as the professor raised her chin with his fingertip. Would you like to kiss me? Carter inquired while strengthening his hold over Wendy's consciousness. Aye, Wendy's thoughts had turned completely blank. She couldn't muster any resistance to the spell that was urging her to say yes. Such sublime pleasure, Carter thought as he watched the internal struggle in Wendy's eyes. He then slowly lowered his head to taste the girl's luscious lips that were begging to be kissed. Visit Novelbin.cm for updates. When the professor's lips were mere inches away from her own, the image of a red-headed boy appeared in Wendy's head. And no. Wendy hastily pushed Carter away and took a few steps back. Carter was surprised, but soon an evil smile appeared on his lips. It was as if Wendy's last-second struggle was turning him on. No. Carter asked. No, what? Aye. Wendy stuttered, but the image of the boy inside her head suddenly disappeared when Carter fully activated the spell inside her sea of consciousness. Wendy's expression slackened as her beautiful blue eyes clouded over. Carter's smile widened as he neared the girl. His prey had already been cornered. All he needed to do was to reach out and make Wendy fall into the abyss of darkness. Chapter 269, A Vessel That Held Limitless Possibilities. Charlotte watched from the side as Carter reached out his hand towards her little sister. However, just as the professor was about to claim his prize, a sudden knock on the door of his room stopped him in his tracks. This is the Knight Commander of the Angarian War Sovereign, a commanding voice sounded from outside the door. There is an emergency situation and I am gathering the members of my night order for a mission. I was told that my subordinate, Wendy Armstrong, was seen entering this house. I would like the residents to please cooperate with our night order's mission EAD new chapters on no/v/e/ln.com. Carter frowned because he was once again foiled from having his way with the young noble lady in front of him. However, he was someone who knew when to step back in order to obtain the bigger picture. Wendy was already under his full control. The girl wouldn't be able to escape even if she wanted to. I guess putting it off for later will make the main dish more delicious, Carter thought as he calmed the heat that was surging in his body. He took a step back and glanced at the door before looking back at the dazed girl in front of him. Let's continue this later, Carter said softly. Visit me tonight, here in my room. Do you understand? Yes, Wendy muttered absent-mindedly. Her clouded eyes slowly returned to normal. Wendy blinked as she looked at the professor in front of her and tilted her head in confusion. She couldn't remember what happened after the professor had asked her to taste the candy. The blonde beauty couldn't even remember if she had tasted the candy or not. About the candy. Wendy fidgeted. You were asking me earlier to test it right, Professor. Don't worry. You can come back later and taste as many as you want. Carter grinned as he crossed his arms over his chest. Okay. Wendy smiled and nodded her head. Another knock was heard on the door as William's voice passed through Wendy's ears. Wendy, are you here? William asked. We have an emergency mission. I came to find you. Carter walked towards the door and opened it. He then came face to face with the boy who had prevented him from conquering his target. I've long heard about the Knight Commander's fame, but I didn't have the opportunity to make your acquaintance. Carter extended his hand for a handshake. I am Professor Carter Araceli, third-year magic instructor. William replied as he shook the professor's hand. William von Ainsworth. Carter was about to say more when a faint fragrance, that came from the young boy's body, entered his nose. His pupils shrank in their sockets as he stared directly at the boy's chest. Professor, William asked. Is there something wrong? And no, Carter stuttered. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir William. Same here, Professor, William said as he waited for the professor to release his hand. For some reason Carter was holding his hand in a vice-like grip, unwilling to let it go. Professor, you can let go of me now. As if awakening from his daze, Carter awkwardly released William's hand and scratched his cheeks. I'm sorry. It was my first time shaking the hand of a Knight Commander and I lost my composure for a while. I see. William nodded. Professor, we really have an urgent mission. If you don't mind, can you tell me if my subordinate, Wendy, is here? Hearing her name, Wendy opened the door wider and showed herself to William. I'm here, Will. Let's go. We need to go on an emergency mission. Understood, Wendy replied. Sorry, I have to go now, big sister, Professor Carter. Don't worry about me and do your job properly. Charlotte waved at her. Be safe and may the gods watch over the two of you. Carter pressed his fist over his chest. Thank you, William and Wendy said at the same time. Carter and Charlotte even walked the two of them to the front door and gave them one final wave of farewell before returning inside the house. Professor, why don't we return to your room and continue where we left off? Charlotte proposed in a seductive manner. There's no need to rush, my love. Carter caressed the side of her face before giving her a kiss. Handle your duties first and return here tonight. I suddenly remembered that I needed to do something important. A look of disappointment flashed over Charlotte's face, but she still accepted Carter's excuse. I will return tonight then. Good. I love you too, Professor. The two shared a passionate kiss before parting ways. Carter returned to his room in a hurry and closed the door behind him. His hand was trembling in excitement and there was a look of joy in his eyes. God's essence? That was definitely God's essence. Carter's eyes went bloodshot when he remembered the subtle power that pulsed within William's chest. To think that I would find someone with God's essence in this kingdom, and he seems to be completely oblivious of it? What a waste. Carter's handsome face contorted as he paced around his room. I can't be wrong. That is definitely the scent of God essence and it is stronger than the one that the princess possesses. In the past, he had encountered the same feeling when he was introduced to the princess of the demon race. The demon princess was hailed as one of the 7 deadly sins and the God essence inside her had the power to devour anything in existence. What should I do? Carter thought as he paced around the room. Should I report this? Carter immediately rejected this idea. Only a fool would report such a find to his superior and he was not stupid. Since he was the one who found it, he would claim it for himself and not share it with anyone? I need to rethink my strategy, Carter muttered. The current one is no good. Wait, that girl Wendy is close to him. I can use her? This is perfect. Carter began to laugh as a plan started to form inside his head. Being a Knight Commander is far superior than being a talented instructor at the Royal Academy. I guess it's time to switch bodies again. The professor grinned evilly. He never thought that he would find the perfect vessel that held limitless possibilities in a kingdom that was assigned to him. Although he felt sorry for betraying his superior's orders, he was certain that once he got hold of William's body, no one in the world would be able to stop him. Chapter 270, Pain is temporary, but my fists are eternal. Where are we going? Wendy asked. What mission will we be doing this time? William didn't answer as he led Wendy through the Solaris dormitory. The students that saw them together immediately made themselves scarce because Williams was radiating a do not FCK with me right now ******** aura. Wendy was oblivious of William's current expression because the red-headed boy was walking ahead of her. All she knew was that something was very different about the boy whom she had been with for the past few days. When the two finally arrived inside William's room, the red-headed boy turned around and hugged Wendy all of a sudden. The blonde beauty was caught by surprise because she didn't expect that William would suddenly hug her out of the blue. Also, the boy's body was trembling as if he was trying to hold himself back from doing something. Wendy instinctively hugged him back and caressed the back of his head. What's wrong? Did something happen? William didn't answer. Instead, he held her tighter. The scene where Carter almost kissed Wendy played over and over inside his head, and it made him feel like killing someone. He had used all of his willpower to stop himself from attacking the professor after he opened the door in his room. He knew that he still didn't know whether the professor was the true mastermind behind it all, or if he had acquaintances that were working with him inside the academy. All he knew was that he couldn't allow Wendy to be tainted by a man who would resort to such lengths to ensnare the girl that he wanted to protect. A girl that had found a place inside his heart. After calming down, William reluctantly took a step back and faced the worried-looking girl in front of him. Wendy, I want to give you something, William said as he took out a lollipop from his pocket. He removed its wrapping and presented it to the girl who loved to eat candies. This is my candy, William said. Try it. I'm sure that it tastes way better than all the candies that you have eaten in the past. Really? Wendy took the candy from William's hand and appraised it. This is the first time I've seen a candy like this. What is it called? It's called a lollipop. Lolly-pop. Yes. William nodded. Try it. Wendy smiled and placed the pink lollipop inside her mouth and started to lick it. It wasn't as sweet as the candy that the professor gave her, but there was an addicting taste to it that she couldn't explain. A few seconds later, she felt lightheaded, and leaned helplessly against William's body for support. Don't worry, William whispered in Wendy's ear. You're going to be fine now. Everything is going to be alright. The lollipop inside Wendy's mouth dissolved completely, and its divinity washed over Wendy's body like a gentle breeze. It felt so good that the girl sighed once before burying her head into William's chest to sleep. William sighed in relief as he gently lifted her body and carried her towards the bed, so that she could sleep more comfortably. After taking off her shoes, the red-headed boy sat beside Wendy and held her hand. He had already made his decision to remove the spell inside Wendy's body. He wouldn't allow Carter to use the Mind Weaver spell to force her to do something that she didn't want to do. The scenes that the system had shared with him while he ran full speed towards Carter's residence made him want to murder Carter 1,000 times over. If he was only a few seconds late, Wendy might have already been. Killing intent rose within William's heart as his gaze sharpened like a blade. He had already considered Wendy his lover and he wouldn't allow Carter, or any man, to lay their hands on her. William wouldn't allow it. No matter who it was. Whether it was a teacher, a knight, a prince, or a king, he would kill anyone who tried to hurt Wendy. He didn't mind dirtying his hands as long as the people that were important to him lived happy and carefree lives. Soon, the killing intent receded as William got hold of his senses. The system was currently monitoring the changes in Wendy's body and her vital signs had already returned to normal. Host, the Mind Weaver spell has been completely erased from Wendy's sea of consciousness. She is no longer under its effects. Also, with the power of the lollipop, she has gained a high resistance against charm spells that are not reinforced by divine powers. Thank you for the report, William replied. Did you succeed in planting the tracker on the professor's body when we shook hands? Yes. Currently, the professor is sitting in his room with his eyes closed. I assume that he is just meditating, or perhaps controlling those under the effect of the Mind Weaver spell from his location. Continue to monitor him, William ordered. If he does something suspicious, let me know right away. Understood. Somewhere in Asgard. William, do you want to join my team? A beautiful Valkyrie with red hair asked with a smile. Your performance in the last battle against the orcs was amazing. I'd like to have a brave warrior like you on my team. I'm sorry, but I'm already a member of Captain Wendy's team, William replied. The Valkyrie chuckled as she leaned her voluptuous body over William's. I'm sure that I can give you more benefits than that tomboy could ever give you. If you like, I can even. Hold it right there, B*TCH. An enraged Wendy stormed towards William and pushed the red-haired Valkyrie aside. How many times do I need to tell you, Herja, that William is my teammate? Wendy asked with a glare. Stop poaching the warriors from our legion. Herja crossed her arms over her chest and fearlessly returned Wendy's glare. I'm just giving William an option. I mean, warriors are allowed to go to another legion if they want to. You can't make them stay by force. This is the rule that Lady Freya has decreed, is it not? Yes. What you say is true, Wendy replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. However, blatant poaching of a warrior from another legion is not included in Lady Freya's decree. You are overstepping your bounds. If William wants to leave my legion then I will allow it. What I will not allow is for you, or any of the other captains, to take him away by force. Silly Wendy, Herja grinned. I'm not forcing anyone. Like I said, I am only giving William an option. I am not the first, nor will be the last to ask him to jump ship. Others have already done so before me, so it's only normal for me to join the trend as well. Herja was stating a fact and Wendy couldn't refute it. Among the new warriors that were brought to Valhalla, William was simply too eye-catching. His silver hair, coupled with his handsome looks already made him an eye candy to the ladies. However, aside from his good looks, he was also a strong and very capable warrior. A warrior who didn't shy away in the face of danger in order to protect his comrades and allow them time to escape from an enemy that was stronger than them. Valkyries may be warriors, but they were also maidens. They were constantly looking for a life partner that could protect their backs on the battlefield. Wendy understood this, and that's why she was always in the lookout for those who were bold enough to seduce William and whisk him away from her hold. Seeing that the look on Wendy's face was close to a breaking point, r18 decided to take her leave. Although they were both Valkyries, Wendy was stronger than her. It could even be said that Wendy was among the top 3 strongest Valkyrie captains because she was blessed with superhuman strength. She could easily turn an orc warrior's head into meat paste with a single slap. This was why most Valkyries didn't want to get on her bad side. The only reason why they dared to was because of William. The silver-haired warrior was simply too irresistible for the Valkyrie captains to ignore. Take your time and think about it, William, r18 said as wings sprouted behind her back. You are welcome in my legion anytime. After saying those words, r18 flew towards the sky and gave William one last wink before flying away in the direction of her residence. Wendy looked at the retreating figure with disdain. She was so close to summoning her spear and turning the hateful Valkyrie captain into a skewered pig. William, Wendy said as she turned her head to look at the warrior who was looking at her with a calm expression. I have something to ask of you. William placed his hands behind his back as he stood straight like a sword. Is it another mission? I am ready to go anytime, Captain. Wendy chuckled. This was the sort of person William was. As long as it was a mission, he would do it in a serious manner that earned him the admiration and respect of warriors and Valkyries alike. And because of this, I can't allow others to have you, Wendy thought as she walked towards the warrior that she had personally taken from the battlefield of Midgard. She looked at his silver hair, his beautiful light green eyes, and his face that had made the ladies in Valhalla look at him like wolves finding their prey. William. Yes, Captain. Will you marry me? Excuse me. Wendy looked at the confused teenager with a smile on her face. Her hands wrapped around his body in a light embrace. It was loose enough to allow William to not get suffocated, but firm enough to prevent him from escaping. The tomboy Valkyrie captain under Gunnar's Legion had finally decided who her partner for life would be. She would not allow anyone to take her silver-haired warrior away from her, so she decided to marry him and stop anyone from making advances on him. Will you marry me? Wendy repeated. I swear that if you say no, I'll break all of your bones and drag you to Lady Freya's quarters. There, we would exchange our vows and become partners for life. Don't worry, I'll ask the Goddess Amalthea to give me some of her golden apples to help your body heal after our wedding is done. Upted chapters and nfelbin.com. Wendy narrowed her gaze as she looked straight into William's eyes. They were the eyes of a woman that wouldn't take no for an answer. So, are you going to say yes? Or must I drag you kicking and screaming like a little girl? The choice is yours to make. Also, remember this, William. Pain is temporary, but my fists are eternal. If you don't want to suffer eternal pain, you should already know what answer you are going to give me. Yes. Chapter 271, A Night in Valhalla rated 18. Disclaimer, this chapter is R18. You already know the drill, wink wink. The sound of birds singing and water flowing from a small fountain reached William's ears as he found himself in an unfamiliar place. He didn't know how or when it happened, but he was now half submerged in what seemed to be a pool filled to the brim with spring water. The water was so clear that he could see the bottom without any problems. William scanned his surroundings to get an idea of where he was, but what he saw made his eyes widen in shock. A vast and beautiful valley, that was dyed in the red and yellow colors of autumn, appeared in front of his eyes. Several women with a pair of white wings behind their backs flew in the distance. They were wearing a type of armor that reminded William of the Valkyries in the games that he had played back on Earth. It was late in the afternoon and the sun was slowly descending in the west. He estimated that it was only an hour or two away from sunset. It didn't take long for him to realize that he was bathing in a pool that was on top of what seemed to be a mountain that overlooked everything around him. It felt so surreal and luxurious that the red-headed boy didn't know what to think. Aren't you finished bathing yet, husband? A bold voice filled with eager expectation sounded behind him. When William turned his head to look, he found himself staring at a beautiful lady who seemed to be in her early 20s looking at him with a satisfied smile. Her long blonde hair rested on her waist, while a pair of light blue eyes looked at him as if she was looking at the love of her life. The 4 pairs of wings behind her back flapped softly as she landed on the ground. William looked at the lady in front of him and recognized her instantly. Although she was a bit older, taller, and more curvy, there was no doubt in his mind that the girl he was staring at was his girlfriend, Wendy. Like the Valkyries he had seen earlier, Wendy was also wearing a set of revealing lightweight armor that made William wonder if it really offered any kind of protection. What's wrong? Haven't you finished bathing? Wendy inquired as she moved closer. Maybe you are waiting for me to finish my duties, so that I can join you? As expected of my beloved. You really do love me. William didn't know how to react because things were happening way too fast for him to process. Before he could even reply to the lady in front of him, the latter had already removed her armor and waded into the pool towards him. Wendy? William inquired. You're Wendy, right? Of course, I'm Wendy. Wendy frowned. What's wrong? Do you not even recognize your own wife? Wendy had already arrived beside William and playfully caressed his chest. The moment her soft, delicate hands touched his skin, a surge of electric current passed through William's body. That was when he realized that there were a few things about his body that were different. He was a head taller than the lady in front of him, and his body was more muscular compared to his 14-year-old self. William grabbed his hair and found it long enough to rest on his shoulder. The surprising part about this was that the color of his hair was silver. He tried to reel in the surprise and confusion he was feeling and decided to ask the beautiful lady some questions. "Wendy, where are we?" William asked as he stopped Wendy's flirtatious hand from moving downwards. "Where are Priscilla, Est, and the others?" The air suddenly became tense as Wendy narrowed gaze. "Who is this Priscilla, Est, and the others you are talking about? Are you having an affair with the other Valkyries behind my back?" Wendy released a powerful pressure that descended on William like a mountain. The expression of the beautiful young lady suddenly changed into a warrior princess who had just caught her husband cheating on her. "Hey, why aren't you answering my questions?" Wendy asked as her hand gripped William's wrist. The sound of something breaking and the pain that followed after made the silver-haired young man wince in pain. Seeing his pained expression, Wendy immediately released her hold on his wrist and the tense atmosphere disappeared completely. Sorry," Wendy apologized as she cradled William's injured hand. "You know that I'm a very jealous person. You should know better than to mention the names of other girls in my presence." She then took out a small slice of apple from out of nowhere and made William eat it. "This apple came from the golden apples of the Goddess Amalthea," Wendy explained. "It will heal most injuries, and we usually only use it when we are injured in battle. I only have 3 more slices, so you'd better not hurt yourself, okay?" William wanted to say that the one who hurt him was her, but he knew better than to argue with the lady who looked like the grown-up version of Wendy, but with a more brutal personality. A few seconds after eating the sliced apple, William's injury was healed completely. He moved his hand and arm and deemed that everything was working properly. Wendy simply watched from the side as if she was amused by William's actions. You said I am your husband, when did we get married?" William inquired. He needed to get more information about his wife and this world that felt familiar to him. "Has your head injury still not fully recovered?" Wendy asked back. "The healers said that some of your memories might have been affected because of your injury, but I didn't know that it was this serious." Wendy suddenly became anxious as she cupped William's face. "I'm sorry. I wasn't able to control my strength and pushed you away during our wedding night. I didn't expect that it would hurt so much after you put your..." Wendy gulped as she lowered her head to look at the little William that was currently poking her belly. William was secretly admonishing his little guy for getting excited without his permission. Even so, he kept a calm expression as he listened to Wendy's explanation. "I knew you were a true warrior when I brought your soul back from the battlefield. But, I never expected that you would be very manly down there as well." Wendy blushed as she averted her gaze. "We only got married 3 days ago, but because of your injury, I had no choice but to wait until you were fully healed to continue the consummation of our marriage. My senior said that since we have done it once already, it shouldn't hurt as much when we do it the second time. Don't worry, they gave me ropes that can withstand the strength of a Valkyrie. You can tie me up later, so I won't be able to hurt you again." William did his best to prevent his lips from twitching after hearing Wendy's explanation. He was still finding it hard to match the crude and bold lady in front of him from the delicate and straightforward girl who would instantly blush the moment he smiled at her. Discover updated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co. "So, we got married 3 days ago, but when I jammed it in during our honeymoon, she got hurt and gave me a serious head injury," William thought as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "She also managed to acquire ropes so that I could tie her up to prevent me from getting hurt again. I didn't know that I'd be able to experience bondage play for the first time in my life in a dream." William looked at his wife and pulled her close to him. He then brushed her long, silky, blonde hair as he organized his thoughts. Wendy, on the other hand, closed her eyes and wrapped her arms around William's back. Their bodies pressed against each other, as the light of the sunset slowly disappeared on the horizon. Half an hour later, Wendy flew in the air holding William in a princess carry. She headed towards a residence that was located on the cliff of the mountain. The two of them had a light dinner and then the ever-excited wife half-dragged William towards the bedroom. Although William had no experience on how the deed was done, he had watched enough to understand the basics, not to mention, a certain old man that specialized in stamina training taught him the tricks on how to make ladies feel good. "I didn't think that Owen's 444 love-making techniques would be used in a dream," William mused as he tied the beautiful lady up, according to her wishes. Although he still didn't understand why he had suddenly appeared in Valhalla, he decided to go with the flow for now. After tying Wendy's arms and legs to the 4 corners of the bed, he kissed her forehead before looking straight into her eyes. "Are you sure you want to do this?" William asked. "You can still say no, and I will untie you right away. You are my husband and I am your wife," Wendy answered. "I had to fight the other Valkyries to call dibs on you first, you know? It's your fault for standing out too much. Will, I have been waiting for this day for months. Don't make me wait any longer, please." Seeing Wendy's pleading gaze, William finally let go of all inhibitions and kissed her lips passionately. He then moved downwards to kiss her neck, her collarbone, and the 2 majestic peaks that stood proudly on her chest. William did his best to control his emotions and did his best to be gentle. At first, he thought that everything he was seeing was just a dream. But the pain he had felt when Wendy crushed his wrist was so real that he was finding it hard to treat everything like an illusion. Wendy's sighs of pleasure reverberated in the room and it made William breath ragged. He was only caressing her body, and yet, Wendy was already driving him crazy with her seductive voice filled with pleasure. In the end, he was unable to resist the urge and gave into his instinct. He gently spread Wendy's legs as he prepared to finish what he had started. William gave her one last kiss on the lips before he lowered his hips and... Chapter 272, I can't believe we did 30 rounds. When William opened his eyes, something golden appeared in his line of sight. Soon, the sound of a soft and steady breath of a sleeper reached his ears. He was still not fully awake, but he did recognize the girl that was within his embrace. It was at that moment when images of passionate lovemaking filled his head. William's body stiffened and all the drowsiness that was still lingering in his body disappeared completely. Slowly, but surely, William disentangled himself from the blonde beauty in his embrace. He then looked at Wendy with a serious expression and noticed a few things that made him sigh in relief. It was just a dream, William thought as he patted his chest in relief. Wendy was still wearing her school uniform, and her youthful face showed that she was still in her early teens. The red-headed boy wasn't able to stop himself from comparing the young and beautiful Wendy to the curvaceous adult Wendy in his dreams. In a few years, she will definitely make the heads of every man turn towards her, William mused as he brushed away the lock of hair that had fallen over her sleeping face. He had turned the protection of his dormitory room to its highest setting, which made it impossible for anyone to leave the room without his permission. William still remembered Carter's order to Wendy to meet him last night, so the half-elf locked her inside his room to prevent her from sneaking off towards the professor's residence. Although the system had said that the spell had been completely wiped away from her sea of consciousness, William didn't want to take any chances and took the matter into his own hands. He then asked the system to do one final check on Wendy's body to see if there were any anomalies. Host, all the parameters on Wendy's body and sea of consciousness are all normal. There are no side effects from the Mind Weaver spell and there is no chance for it to work on her in the future. Good. Thank you. You're welcome. After the system had made its report, William once again looked at the girl who was sleeping peacefully on his bed. Once again, he was reminded of the love-making that he had done with the adult Wendy in his dreams. I can't believe we did 30 rounds. William covered his face that had turned red from embarrassment. This won't do. I need to cool myself down. The half-elf left the bed and headed straight into the bathroom. For some reason, he could still feel the lingering warmth of Wendy's body and it was making his own body heat up. William was a healthy 14-year-old boy. Having that kind of dream, and waking to see himself embracing a beauty in his arms, it was impossible not to have any kind of reaction. Little William was already rearing his head as if he was prepared to fight for another 30 rounds. William didn't know if he should laugh or cry that his dependable junior had awoken its eagerness for a night battle. Soon, the sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom as William soaked his body with cold water. He hoped that it would be enough to drive away the sudden heat that had awakened inside of him after ascending the steps of adulthood, inside his dream. Wendy slowly opened her eyes the moment William entered the bathroom. It didn't take long before her entire face turned a shade of red as she recalled the dream she had. In her dream, she watched as her adult self and the silver-haired William made love to each other. I can't believe they did it 30 times, Wendy thought as she rolled on top of the bed. It was her first time seeing the actual deed and it made her face blush in shame and embarrassment. After rolling for a few more times on top of the bed, the blonde beauty hugged William's pillow and wondered if the boy she liked would be able to accomplish the same feat that the silver-haired William had done in her dreams. Read latest chapters at n/v/e/lbi.co/m. She knew that William had no intention of doing those things to her at this point in time because they were still too young, but her heart wouldn't stop beating wildly inside her chest. Wendy didn't want to admit it, but she felt envious of the adult Wendy in her dreams. She looked so satisfied afterwards, Wendy thought with a reddened face. I wonder if I'll have the same face after Will finally decides to embrace me. Inside Carter's room, Carter was finalizing the plan he had concocted after realizing the limitless potential that was hidden in William's body. His desire to obtain this new vessel made it become his top priority. After taking control of the Knight Commander's body, he would marry Wendy, Charlotte, Annie, and 2 more noble ladies in the Hellan Kingdom and build his influence. He would stage an act on the day of the Interdivision battle where he would die under the Knight Commander's hand. Carter needed to do this in order to fool the demon general that was his superior. He would then take his time to train his new abilities, as well as his brides, and slowly chip away at the power of the king of the Hellan Kingdom through schemes and deceit. Afterwards, he would stage a civil war, and crown himself the new king. Carter believed that it would only take him 10 years at most to put this new plan into motion. By then, he would have mastered the powers in William's body and taken over the entire southern continent. By then, he would no longer need to take orders from anyone. He would be the supreme ruler of the entire continent and everyone would bow under his feet. A few hours ago, he felt that the control he had over Wendy disappeared completely. It surprised him at first, but he soon accepted this outcome. For someone that had God essence inside his body, it was very possible for him to erase the spell that had been planted within Wendy's sea of consciousness. This discovery didn't make Carter feel anxious. There was no way for anyone to know that the spell originated from him. He had ensured that the spell couldn't be traced back to him. This was why he was confident that William wouldn't become suspicious of him. After his connection to Wendy was cut, Carter immediately formulated a new set of plans in his head. Although he would have to do it in a roundabout manner, he was confident that he would succeed in luring William to his location. He had many pawns in his hands, so he was not worried that he would run out of subordinates to carry out his orders. First, he would conduct a massacre in order to create a diversion. Then he would lure the boy to a safe location and deal with him there. He had done this countless times in the past, and he was confident that he would succeed this time as well. He had taken over the bodies of individuals far stronger than William, but he had never taken over a body with a god essence inside it. The thrill of conquest made him feel anxious and excited at the same time. Anxious because he didn't know what to expect, and excited because he was confident that even though there were unknown factors, he was still confident that he would be able to take over William's body using the methods he had developed over the years. William von Ainsworth, Carter thought. His eyes glinted in delight for the future that was laid out for him. Enjoy the last few days you have in this world, for they will soon come to an end. He was confident that with the preparations he had planned, William's body was already as good as his. Chapter 273, I knew that following him was not a mistake. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. William sat in a meditative position inside a spacious cavern at the Thousand Beast domain. This is where he had deposited the magic crystal cavern that he had acquired in the Kirinter Mountains, during their special mission. Not far from him, Dia, Thor, and Ragnar lay in a special nest where they slept peacefully. They were still in the midst of their hibernating period. The system told William that letting the three kids stay inside the magic crystal cavern would greatly help them with their growth. Since that was the case, William decided to let the three rest inside the cavern for the remainder of their hibernation. The other beasts within the domain also didn't want to miss out on this and gathered inside the cavern as well. The Kasaganaga, Fenrir, and the Trollhounds, the Blood Eagle, Cercops monkeys, as well as the Angre birds were all inside the cavern to strengthen their bodies. All of them were magical beasts, so having a steady source of magic power was beneficial for all of them. Ella laid beside the nest of the three kids and looked at them with gentle eyes. She hoped that Dia, Thor, and Ragnar would soon awaken from their slumber and aid William in his undertakings. With the help of the magic crystals and the 3 centennial ants that it had eaten, the Kasaganaga's rank has increased to a Class B beast. It was currently the strongest creature that resided inside the Thousand Beast domain, followed by Fenrir and the Blood Eagle, Scottere, who both became Class C beasts not long ago. The Trollhounds, Angre birds, and the Cercops monkeys had also increased their ranks to the middle stages of Class D beasts. William was very satisfied with the rapid growth of his small legion that would become his main fighting force, aside from his Night Order. Every time the half-elf visited the Thousand Beast domain to check on the kids and his legion, he had spent an hour or two absorbing the magic essence in the air to increase the level of his Ice Wizard job class. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000 FIDDU of TS on NOV/E/LN.com. Gained EXP points, 1000. When he was inside the cavern, he would gain 1000 experience points every 5 minutes. With such an ideal place to cultivate, William wished that he could stay there for a long time. Sadly, he was too busy and could only stay for a few hours inside the domain every day. After exactly an hour, William stood up and left the cavern. Like always, he visited the different places inside his domain and consulted with the system about possible add-ons they could include after they gained more god points. Suddenly, William's body trembled and a searing pain spread across his chest. The pain was so intense that William felt that his chest was being ripped apart by an invisible force. System, what is happening? William asked through gritted teeth. Host, the seal on your magic powers is about to break. The pain you are feeling right now is due to the re-emergence of the magical power that had been suppressed for the last 5 years. William's eyes widened in shock when he heard the system's reply. Soon, the surprise was replaced by happiness, but the pain he was currently experiencing made it hard for him to laugh out loud. It was then when realized that the seal on his powers broke a few weeks earlier than he initially estimated. When he asked the system about this matter, the latter told him that it was due to the absorption of the dark energy from the twin dungeon cores, which sped up the seal's duration. As if waiting for that exact moment, a powerful shockwave pulsed around the half-elf as the shackles that bound his magic powers broke one by one. The ground froze solid and ice spikes protruded out from the ground as William's first magic-based job class, Ice Wizard, resurfaced. A blizzard suddenly appeared out of nowhere, covering his surroundings in a snowy haze. The sky of the Thousand Beast domain darkened as thick storm clouds covered the sun. Dark energy oozed out from William's body as the chains binding his dark magic broke apart as well. Thunder rumbled and lightning snaked across the heavens. Some lightning bolts descended into the dark blizzard that was rampaging on the ground. A few seconds later, a terrifying tornado of ice, darkness, and lightning spiraled towards the heavens. Kasaganaga opened its eyes after sensing the disturbance within the domain. It hurriedly ran outside the cavern to investigate when a white blur streaked past it. Ella had also felt that something was happening to William, so she decided to temporarily leave her wards as she went out to check on his condition. The other creatures, except the 3 hibernating beasts, also rushed out of the cavern to see what was going on. When they saw the giant tornado in the distance, they instinctively knew that William was at the center of it all. This The Kasaganaga's mouth dropped open as it sensed the overwhelming magic power that was congregating in the location of the dark tornado. As a demigod, it had seen many things in its long life, but it had never seen someone wield so many powers inside their body. Aside from the prevalent ice, darkness, and lightning magic, Kasaganaga also felt several powers which belonged to fire, wind, earth, and water. What was surprising was that it also felt that there were other powers in the mix that were almost too subtle to notice. Can a half-elf really wield all of these powers inside his body? The Kasaganaga thought as it tried to understand what it was currently seeing. No, even those bastard elves could only wield 3 kinds of powers at most, and they were among the races that are proficient in wielding magic and spirit powers. The deity of the sky shot down its initial assessment because William's current state was something that it had seen for the first time. After their talk during the battle at the Kirintur Mountains, the Kasaganaga understood that William wanted to visit the Silver Moon continent to see his mother and also find a way to save his father. Because of this, the two had come to an understanding that they were not enemies and could even cooperate with each other in order to return Kasaganaga to its former glory. This is also a good thing, the Kasaganaga mused. Currently, I don't have the power to drown those long-eared bastards to oblivion. However, having a strong ally would help me get stronger as well. While the Kasaganaga was deep in its thoughts, the denizens of the Thousand Beast domain looked at their master with awe and admiration. I knew that following him was not a mistake. Fenrir, the leader of the Trollhounds, looked at the violent tornado with happiness. After it received William's blessing, it became smarter and stronger than the average Trollhounds. After it hit rank C, it unlocked the ability to communicate with William and the other members of his King's Legion via telepathy. Fenrir glanced at the other Trollhounds. Sensing their leader's gaze, the Trollhounds looked back at Fenrir with undisguised happiness. Grow strong, my brothers. Fenrir gave a low growl. Someday, our master will need our strength. We mustn't disappoint him. The Trollhounds howled in unison in reply to Fenrir's words. All of them vowed that they would become strong in order to fight by their leaders and master's side whenever their aid was needed. The Cercopes monkeys, who were usually rowdy, had quieted down. The same could be said for the Angre birds who liked to curse at others. Scutteray, the blood eagle, perched on top of the Hyperion tree as its bloody eyes locked onto the half-elf that was at the center of the tornado. Unlike the others, it was a creature that could see past through most things and focus its gaze on anything that had blood in it. William had promised it that he would supply it with beasts to eat in order for it to become stronger. So far, it had only preyed upon the goblins inside the goblin crypt. To be honest, it was growing tired of eating goblins. It hoped that in the future, William would be able to let it eat its fill of stronger and more powerful monsters outside the Thousand Beast domain. Half an hour later, the unprecedented phenomenon had ended. William stood with his eyes closed as orbs of power made up of ice, darkness, lightning, fire, wind, earth, and water circled around his body. A ray of light fell from the sky as the dark clouds parted. The golden radiance of the sun joined the other elements as they moved around William's body as if they were dancing. It was as if they were celebrating that they had regained their freedom and could once again aid the half-elf in the battles that he was about to face in the future. William opened his eyes as the flow of magic power circulated inside his body. Glacial Lance, William said softly. Although he could summon the lance with just a thought, he decided to voice it out loud in order to declare that he was once again able to use his magic powers. With a thought he shot it towards the sky, leaving a trail of white mist as it ascended into the heavens. William threw several more glacial lances in rapid succession as he once again tested the extent of his powers. The red-headed boy then bought a giant solid boulder from the god shop that cost 1 god point. He planned to use it for target practice to test his other powers. William pointed his finger at the boulder as his hand imitated that of a gun. Bang! William shouted as he shot a void arrow at the giant boulder. Although this skill's main purpose was to blind its target, it also dealt a bit of dark magic, making it a nice alternative to deal both status and damage to William's enemies. The black arrow hit the boulder and small shrapnels of rock burst from its body. Feeling like a child again, William fired void arrows using both hands like a gunslinger in one of the movies that he watched when he was still back on Earth. Seeing his playful attitude, the Kasaganaga decided to join in on the fun as it curled up into a ball and charged towards William's direction. Soon, the two engaged in a mock battle, sending spells flying in all directions. Ella shook her head as she watched the two children play their hearts out while they cursed at each other. It had been a while since she last saw William this happy. She hoped, more than anything else in the world, that the half-elf would continue to smile for more years to come. Chapter 274, The Meaning of Discretion. After having a fun spar with Kasaganaga, William exited the Thousand Beast domain. Ironically, the moment he left the domain, Wendy knocked on the door after finishing her morning lessons to ask him if he wanted to have lunch with her. William happily agreed to Wendy's proposal and went to the usual spot where they would always have a picnic together. When they arrived at their destination, Est and the twins were already there and had already spread out the food on the picnic blanket. The lovebirds have finally arrived, Est said in a sarcastic manner. Ian, prepare the melon seeds. I heard that half-elves love them. William smiled and sat down in front of Est, while Wendy sat beside him. I do love melon seeds. Ian, do you have some? My seeds are too good for you. Better find someone else's, Ian replied with a snort. Wendy lightly patted William's shoulder and whispered, I'll buy you some later. I didn't know you liked them. Thank you, William replied as he unconsciously kissed her forehead. Est and Ian stiffened because the half-elf didn't even try to hide their PDA in front of them. Isaac, who was watching from the side, lit a candle in his heart. He prayed for the half-elf's swift and painless death after his young master and twin brother had their way with him. The two of you should just get a room, Est said with a fed-up expression. Aren't you afraid that lightning will strike you down for acting lovey-dovey like this in public? For some reason, he couldn't stop the irritation that was slowly surfacing in his heart from showing. William, on the other hand, smirked. He was not afraid of lightning falling down from the heavens. After all, his job class Prince of Thunder was not just for show. Calm down and cool yourself down. William grabbed the jug of fruit juice with a mischievous grin plastered on his face. Here, let me help you. Suddenly, the exterior of the jug was covered with a thin layer of ice. Est's, Ian's, Isaac's, and Wendy's eyes widened in shock as they looked at the frozen jug before shifting their attention to William. You recovered your magic power? Est inquired with a serious expression on his face. When did it return? To be honest, Est felt very guilty for the sacrifice that William had made in the trial of courage. He had long wanted to find a way to repay the half-elf for helping him clear the trial. His initial thoughts were to have him knighted and added to the Knight Order of Gladiolus. However, never in his wildest dreams did he consider that the half-elf would found his own Knight Order that was recognized by the king. Just an hour ago, William replied. It's quite unfortunate that I can't use it in the interdivision battles. I bet everyone's jaws would drop off if I start shooting ice shards in the middle of the fight. Wendy frowned as a sudden realization came to her mind. Since you have your magic back, shouldn't you be in the magic division as well? How about you tell the professors about a transfer? I'm sure Professor Layla would be extremely happy to have you. After their relationship had become more serious, William had also told her the story of how his powers were sealed. Back then, Wendy felt sad because if William hadn't lost his powers, he would be in the magic division with her. That's right. Ian seconded Wendy's claim. It is only right for you to be in the magic division since you have regained your powers. Est, however, shook his head. Although he could do that, he won't. Isn't that right, Will? William nodded to acknowledge Est's words. I will stay in the martial division, William replied. At least, until this school year ends. I still have a lot of things to do, and leaving the martial division at this time will lower their morale. I can't do that. Everyone quieted down after hearing William's reply. They knew about William's responsibility as the commander of the Angarian war sovereign. Right now, the half-elf was the pride of the martial division. If he suddenly switched to the magic division, they would be devastated. Let's not worry about this for now. William cleared his throat to change the topic. For now, you should just focus on thinking of ways to beat our lineup. Mind you, even if all the big shots among the first years were to band together, you guys won't get an easy win. Upted chapters and nfelbin.com. Don't worry, Est commented in a calm manner. I'll make sure to beat you up in the arena. Oh, you sound confident. I wonder where that confidence of yours is coming from. Just you wait. I'll wipe that smug smile on your face and win the bet we have agreed upon. Wendy, who was eating from the side, raised her head to observe William's and Est's banter. Deep in her heart, she thanked the gods that Est was born as a boy. Her boyfriend and her head prefect get along so well that it would often make her jealous. Fortunately, head prefect is not a girl, Wendy thought. If he was, he would be a more dangerous love rival than Rebecca. After eating their lunch, Wendy, Est, and the twins returned to the magic division for their afternoon classes. The half-elf had already decided to skip classes for the day because he had more important things to do. I just hope he will believe me, William muttered as he walked towards the dean's office. Since the issue with Carter concerned the entire school, it would be appropriate to let Simon know about it before it was too late. Tell me, William, how did you come to know this information? Simon inquired. The elf looked at the red-headed boy with a serious expression. They were currently inside the dean's office and a powerful enchantment had been put in place to prevent eavesdroppers from getting wind of their conversation. I can't tell you how I got the information, William replied with a calm expression on his face. However, I can guarantee that this information is credible. Really? Simon narrowed his eyes as he stared at the youngest knight commander of the Hellan kingdom. Let me get this straight. You're saying that a professor is subtly taking control of the students inside the academy through the use of candies? Yes. Do you have any proof? I brought some candies with me, William said as he placed the pouch of candies that he had confiscated from Wendy on top of the table. Please, check them yourself, sir. Simon nodded and opened the pouch. He then took one candy from it and used his spirit power to give it a closer inspection. A minute later, the elf returned the candy inside the pouch and nodded his head. You're right, Simon commented. There is indeed a strand of spirit power embedded inside it. If not for my strong spiritual sense, I would have not discovered it. What are you going to do, sir? William asked. If this continues, I am afraid that more of the students might fall prey to this dangerous scheme. Simon took the candy pouch and stored it inside his storage ring. He then looked at William in contemplation as if weighing the words that he wanted to say. Rest assured, I will take precautions to handle this matter, Simon stated. For now, I want you to keep this secret to yourself in order to not alarm the mastermind behind this candy incident. Not a word to anyone, do you understand? We should be ready for the possibility that the professor doing this behind the scenes is able to tap into the memories of the people under their control. If word of this spreads, then our chances of capturing the mastermind will disappear completely. Who knows? He might also have acquaintances hiding in the background. For now, act as if nothing is wrong. Also, there's no need for you to look for me again if you discover something else. I have my own ways of monitoring the people inside my own backyard. William nodded his head. He felt a little relieved that Simon took his words seriously. In the beginning, he was afraid that the dean of the academy wouldn't believe him and might even accuse him of spreading fake news. Fortunately, that was not the case, and William left the dean's office feeling slightly better. With Simon's help, he was confident that they would be able to catch all those who were involved with Carter if the two of them worked together. A few minutes after William left the room, Simon sighed and knocked on the top of his table. "You can come out now," Simon said. "It seems that your young master is very able. To think that he managed to know about this scheme without any of you telling him is quite a feat." A black mist gathered in the center of the room. Soon, a man wearing a hooded black robe materialized in front of the dean of the academy. "So far, everything is in order," Ezio replied. "While the commander feels a little guilty in not telling young Master Matthew and young Master William about the details of our operation, it is for their own good. Also, it limits the person in the know, which would prevent the leakage in information. Are you sure that William will not tell anyone else about his discovery?" "He won't. The fact that he came to you with this secret is because he also understands the meaning of discretion. So, for his sake, and the sake of all the students in the academy, we mustn't fail. Failure is not an option. You also understand this, right?" Simon sighed before nodding his head. In fact, he knew that Carter was only a pawn behind the candy incident, which was something that William was not aware of. Although the academy looked peaceful on the surface, there were many things being done behind the scenes in preparation for the battle that was about to come. Chapter 275, Will he be able to resist my charm? William was like an overprotective boyfriend as he accompanied Wendy wherever she went. This caused the rumors about the two of them to spread to the other divisions, and it made Wendy secretly happy. How could she not be happy? She could still remember the passionate words that William told her a day ago, which made her feel like she was on cloud nine. "Wendy, will you be my girlfriend?" William asked. "Yes," Wendy replied in a heartbeat. She was afraid that if she was a second late in her reply, William would change his mind and tell her that he was just joking. This was why, when she confirmed that the handsome half-elf was serious about asking her out, she let go of all of her worries and kissed him passionately for 2 minutes. When their lips parted from each other, she buried her face into William's chest and hugged him tight. "Is this a dream?" Wendy asked anxiously. "Am I dreaming?" William gently patted the back of her head and assured her that she was not dreaming. All he asked of her was to keep their relationship a secret for the time being, because he didn't want to make things difficult for his grandpa, James, and the old fox, Lawrence. "I'm sorry," William apologized. "Although you are now my girlfriend, and I will do my best to always be by your side, I'm afraid that I can't declare it publicly. You already know that I still have an agreement with Rebecca, and I still need to give my grandpa and Sir Lawrence some face. I will only be able to give you hugs and kisses when the two of us are behind closed doors. I'm sorry if you find my affection for you lacking when both of us are in the outside world." Wendy kissed William's cheeks as she looked him in the eye to give her reply. "I understand. However, you'd better make up for it when it's just the two of us, all right?" "Okay," William replied. Wendy fidgeted before asking the question that was nagging at her mind. She knew that nobles usually had many wives, and she was afraid to confront William about this matter in fear that he would think that she was a nosy lover. However, in order to prepare herself for the future, she still decided to ask to put her mind at ease. "Will, how many wives do you plan to have? Promise me that you won't get angry at me if I give you my answer." "How many?" Wendy thought that William was going to say a dozen, because some nobles really did have a dozen wives and even secret mistresses that they hid in the shadows. She hoped that William wouldn't go that route because she knew that she was the very jealous type of girl. 9 wives, William said. 9 wives, Wendy gasped. Although the number of women her boyfriend planned to marry was many, it was still better than William having a dozen wives. Wendy grudgingly nodded her head before looking at William with a pout. "Womanizer. Sorry. Will I be the first wife?" Wendy asked. This was an important matter that she had to know. In every household, the position of first wife was important. It had the highest rank among the other wives, and the woman that held this rank was considered to be the groom's main wife. "Yes," William said softly. "You will be my first wife." "Good." Wendy nodded her head and hugged William. "Will, I love you." "I love you too, Wendy." William kissed her forehead and held her tight. Now that he had already made his feelings known, his heart was finally at peace. "If you don't look where you are going to trip," William reminded the daydreaming girl, who seemed to have her head in the clouds as they walked towards the training area for their night order. Wendy looked left and right to ensure that no one was around them. After seeing that the coast was clear, she then moved close to William and whispered words of love in William's ears. The red-headed boy smiled and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before arriving at their destination. Today was an important day because William planned to ensure that none of his members were going to be affected by the Mind Weaver spell that was slowly spreading throughout the academy. Although he felt guilty, he didn't remove the spell inside Est's and Isaac's bodies. The system had already informed him that Carter had distinctly felt the loss of his connection to Wendy when William fed her his lollipop. He didn't want the latter to become more suspicious, so he refrained from openly targeting those that were still affected by the spell. William still didn't know the professor's motives and those of his acquaintances, if he had any, within the Royal Academy. Everyone line up, William ordered as soon as he arrived at the training grounds. Today, I will give all of you a special treat for all of your hard work. He then took out a few pouches from his storage ring and handed them to his officers. Each of you takes one lollipop, William said in a commanding tone. This is your reward for all of your hard work. Now, all of you eat it before we start today's training. Although everyone felt confused why their commander was suddenly distributing a snack for everyone, none of them complained. Each of them stuck the lollipops inside their mouths and began to eat it. The system had informed him ahead of time that there had been a few members of his Knight Order that had been affected by the Mind Weaver spell. So, it's concentrated in the magic division, William thought. Affirmative. Fortunately, the 4th year seemed to be untouched by the effect of the Mind Weaver spell. It seems that Professor Carter has only targeted the 1st year deletes up to the 3rd year students of the magic division. William nodded in understanding. He thinks that those without magic power are useless, so he's left the martial division alone, William mused. Also, the spirit division has very strong awareness in their sea of consciousness. They would immediately detect a spell that tried to invade their minds, causing them to conduct an investigation. Although he was an enemy, William had to admire Carter's meticulous planning. Now, all that was left for him to do was uncover the professor's agenda. As long as he was able to know it, he would be able to stop it. Read latest chapters at n/v/e/lbi.co/m. William's gaze scanned the members of his Knight Order with a serious expression. He wouldn't allow anyone to take control of the organization that he had built from scratch, for they were the sword and shield that would protect the Hellan Kingdom from those who wished to harm it. Meanwhile, at the borders of the Hellan Kingdom, a legion of hippogriffs flew in a battle formation as they entered the borders of their allied kingdom. They had already been informed beforehand of the upcoming war between the Hellan Kingdom and the 2 dynasties that were just outside their borders. Because of this, they had been very vigilant during their travels and had been on high alert ever since. In the middle of the battle formation was a flying carriage pulled by a blade wyvern. This wyvern was a centennial beast and boasted incredibly high fighting abilities. Just like its name suggested, this wyvern specialized in physical combat and its whole body was as hard as adamantium. Its beak and wings were razor sharp and could easily split steel armor into 2. It was one of the protectors that ensured Princess Sidney's safety from anyone who wished her harm. Inside the carriage, the 3rd Princess of Frisia glanced at the scenery outside the carriage window. She had visited the Hellan Kingdom a few years ago, and she found it to be a strong kingdom that equaled their own. Although she was not interested in politics, she still studied the history and current situation of the 3 kingdoms that were outside the borders of Frisia. Her reason for doing this was simple. She was looking for a candidate that might help her understand the true meaning of love. A love that was strong enough to overcome the power of seduction that had been with her from the day she was born. Currently, her followers had reported a few interesting individuals that appeared in the Hellan Kingdom. When she browsed the contents of the list, one particular name stood out from the rest. Name, William von Ainsworth. Race, half-elf. Age, 14. Magic power, none. Spiritual power, none. Physical fitness, A. Potential, A. Assessment overview, excellent physical prowess, but no magic power. Recommended to be placed under the martial class division. Currently the youngest knight commander in the history of the Hellan Kingdom. According to the reports, his fighting abilities are either at the peak of the silver rank, or in the initial stages of the gold rank. He wears a slave collar on his neck. There is no information on who his master is. Pros. A half-elf, so his looks are very pleasing to the eyes. Holds a high position due to being a knight commander of the Angarian war sovereign. Cons. Has no magic power. Has no spirit power. Very narcissistic. He calls a goat his mama. A slave and a knight commander at the same time. Princess Sidney mused. Now, this is something that I have to see for myself. I wonder, will he be able to resist my charm, or will he be like the rest that would happily kneel and kiss my feet with infatuated smiles on their faces?